just dealing with some slow internet. But yeah, we'll get Simon up here and Assad up here, and they can operate the room. But just give us 1 second here. Bear with us.
Hello, everybody. I think I've become co-host now, so you should be able to hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you well. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you good, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for joining again. Thanks for taking the time, guys. Really appreciate it. I know the community is looking forward to just asking all their questions. And yeah, again, thanks for the time here. So do you guys want to just go straight into questions, or how would you like to start out the call today?
Yeah, sure. So look, I'm not going to give a long introduction like the last ones. I did a interview on Digital Asset News with Rob. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. That gave myself, I gave a long introduction to myself and the projects I've worked upon. I then did a AMA, I can't remember whether it was yesterday, everything's blending into one, Saturday, on my very first Twitter space with myself and Azad. And then we did one with Plan C for those that were in the American time zone and might have missed the European time zone one. So if you don't know who I am, check those out. This space was just because I want to answer as many questions as I possibly can. I don't know if you think it would be useful to go over the recovery plans or whether we just jump straight into questions. I don't mind how you want to do this.
Yeah, I think just because you did cover so much, like I've listened to all your previous content to date, and I think you've covered like in depth quite a bit already to do with that. So yeah, I think the community, I don't want to speak for everyone, of course, but yeah, I just know there are a lot of people like in the Telegram groups that I'm in, just basically wanting to kind of ask all these different questions, and so I think we can just leave this as a Q&A, and as long as you're okay with that, we'll just get people up here that have their questions and just proceed.
All right, cool. Let me give one of my usual long that, I'm famous for longing out and not getting to the point, but I'll try and get to the point. So there's 3 proposals that we're putting forward and I'm discussing with the board. And the first proposal was a timely recovery of Celsius on their own. So I gave TradFi, their advisors, Alex and the board, a strategy that worked for a previous deal I've worked on that worked incredibly well. It required timely response. It required effective communication. And I gave them a timeline for executing that strategy. That timeline was not met, and I got some speculation on why. And so the second part of that is that there is no insolvency issue. There is just a liquidity issue, in which case I believe that Celsius should start communicating a timeline on how they unwind this liquidity issue and make depositors whole. So that was strategy and approach 1. The first part of it, I believe that the time frame has been too long without communication for it to work effectively. But if it is just a liquidity issue, then as soon as the board and the lawyers and the advisors are ready to communicate, then they can communicate with depositors. And I'm happy if I get my deposit back. But then I'd like to work on how we can support Celsius in creating shareholder value. That depends on how well depositors are treated, because that is really the second proposal was giving them a way to make depositors whole if there is something missing. If there is nothing missing and it's just a liquidity issue, then fine, go for approach 1. Approach 2 is there is something missing and there is an insolvency issue. If there is an insolvency issue, then immediately get what you can to make depositors whole and communicate an effective approach for making depositors whole and allowing people to withdraw. Then communicate what the missing gap is, and we gave them a strategy and an approach that worked before that is more speculative, but rather than just losing the haircut or the amount that's short, gave the community the opportunity to gain any upside equity or debt opportunity by the company trading again, reopening again, and then we'll execute a strategy in compliance with securities laws because securities regulators are going to be all over this, so you can't do it without the correct securities partners. When we were working on the Series B funding round, we were putting together all of those partners for Celsius to do what they need to do. So we had all those relationships, we had everything set up, and it could be executed in a timely fashion. That was proposal 2. Proposal 3 is in the scenario where there is insolvency and strategies 1 and 2 are not executed effectively. Then in order to bring back shareholder value, you may need to operate under a new brand, a new team, and make the most of what you've got. And so that is strategy 3. And what I would like to do is ensure that there's enough pressure out there that the best offers are ones to be considered. So if this moves into a bankruptcy, so number 1 is illiquidity, number 2 is insolvency, number 3 is bankruptcy. If it moves into bankruptcy, I want to make sure that we've done everything that we can possibly do to ensure that there is some kind of depositor value, and then that leads to some kind of shareholder value. And if there is a shareholder value, then the token has some kind of future. And so we're putting together proposals in order to meet those requirements of strategy 2 and 3. We've reached out to a pool of investors that have multi-billion-dollar syndicate that we've put together in order to be ready so that we don't just suddenly get an announcement that it's moving into bankruptcy like it has with Voyager. And if it does, then they will give a timeline at which strategies need to be considered. And if those strategies are not ready, then it will be the worst case scenario, which is just sell all the crypto assets, strip off the good assets, give it to TradFi, and the board won't be able to make any decisions at that time. I should say I'm not a lawyer. You can't take the legal advice. This is just my perspective on what's happening and how I'm approaching it. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it because I'm one of the top depositors at Celsius. I have multiple accounts. I've transparently showed a screenshot of one of my rewards that I received today, and people are reverse engineering who I am from one of those accounts. I'm also a shareholder, and therefore I want to maintain some shareholder value. And if there is some shareholder value to be received, then at least the token can have a future, and there can be a strategy for where it either DAOs off. We've worked on turning a company into a DAO before with Shapeshift. So every type of transaction that one needs to do to execute a future for these different types of depositors, shareholders, and token holders, we've already done, and we're happy to help, and we're happy to support. And we wanted to make sure that we got as much community feedback on bnktothefuture.com/Celsius before we call our statutory right to a shareholder meeting, at the same time as speaking to the relevant interests and the relevant advisors, and making sure. Now, if we apply enough pressure, if someone else comes along with a much better deal, I'm more than happy. But I want to make sure that there is a good deal that looks after depositors first, around my belief, because if you negotiate with a non-depositor and non-shareholder, I don't think you're going to get the kind of deal that someone looking after deposits and shareholding can put together. But I really don't give a damn if somebody else has a better offer, because I want the best result that we can get out of this, and that's why I'm applying pressure. Finally, just before we take the questions, the approach that I took is that I silently gave the strategy to the board, and the board and the TradFi advisors, and the TradFi advisors weren't moving fast enough, and I think there's some politics between board and TradFi advisors. Then I said, we'll do it for you, and gave them a proposal to do it for them. And then I said, look, if this is going down into Chapter 11, then make sure that these proposals are reviewed, and you've got as many proposals as possible And so started pulling together as many people that wanted to make those offers, as well as put in our own offer for a recovery. I was offered a board seat at Celsius, and because Alex and I do have a good relationship, and so I've been putting together those proposals in communication. I turned down the board seat because I thought it would lead to me being entangled into the power play where I don't have the ability to apply the external pressure as somebody external as an independent depositor and an independent shareholder. So hopefully that brings back to where we are. Now, based upon all of those different proposals, people have lots of different theories around my interest, whether I've got the community in mind, whether I've got shareholders in mind, whether I've got depositors in mind, or whether I've got token holders in mind. I'm a straight up guy. I'm a straight shooter. I'll tell you the answers where there's conflicts of interest. Look at any of my videos over the last decade. Every time I'm a shareholder in something, and I'm used to conflicts of interest because Bank to the Future owns shares in over 100 different companies. It's a company I co-founded with competing exchanges, with Chinese walls, where you have to make sure that you're not putting certain information into other information. And so I'm very, very used to that. And I've always maintained a pretty neutral role, despite the fact that all of these companies are engaged in an incredible amount of crypto politics. And as a neutral shareholder in many of these different companies, I've often played the role of mediator in order to try and drive forward some of this crypto politics. So that's what I've been doing over the last decade, ever since I spoke at the first Bitcoin conference, through to where we are today. Okay, so that's who I am. Plan C, should we invite anyone on to ask any questions?
Yeah, for sure. I'll just get Assad. I'll just introduce Assad. So he works, with Simon here. He's going to take over as far as just kind of operating the room, getting people on stage, asking questions. So I'm just going to sit back and listen. The one thing I'll just really quickly say, and then I'll let you guys go, is I think the community, just some of these words sound scary, right? When you hear everyone's very emotional, everyone's in a high fear state within crypto in general, and then within the Celsius community, right? Just because we don't know what's going on fully. And so it just feels like, when these words like bankruptcy and insolvency are thrown out there, people they think like, oh, spreading fear and all this stuff. It's like all I feel like Simon is trying to do here, and we're all trying to do, is plan for any worst case scenarios, right? So it's better to be prepared. It's not saying it's going to go down this path. It's just it's plan for. It's hope for the best, plan for the worst, right? Outcome. So it's better to be prepared and be ready than be caught flat-footed. That's really how I'm seeing this. And it's better to have a solution within crypto than a solution outside of crypto. So it's kind of like circles, right? You want to, if the team can get through this, everything's fine. It's insolvent. It's just a liquidity issue. That's best case scenario. We're all happy. Everything's great. But from there, you want to from there. There's a crypto solution. That's a better option. And then obviously the last option, which we all don't seem to want here, is TradFi taking over and liquidating and doing the worst case stuff. So that's all we're trying to prevent. We're all on the same team, and let's let's share information here. I'll let you guys take over. So Assad, if you want to get people up here asking questions, go for it.
Great. Let's just do a quick sound check. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay, great. Just to basically, I guess when we've got about 15 people who've requested to come on as speakers. So there's no particular order, but I'll be choosing you guys. And just one question, introduce yourself, one question, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, first person
I think it's worth disclosing, if you're willing, disclose your interest. Are you a shareholder, a token holder, a depositor, or all three? Or none of those. I think it's worth, because I just think I'm going to disclose my position, and you can ask me on any of my positions. So I think everyone should disclose what their interest is as well.
Okay, let's start with the first person. The Locker, can you introduce yourself and question for Simon, please?
Hi, everybody. Thank you again, Simon, and the whole team for doing this. It's very much appreciated. Any information that we can get is really vital for us. In lieu of that, I would like to ask, you tweeted that you have a multi-billion dollar syndicate of investors interested in your recovery plans. Can you elaborate a bit on that? Thank you so much.
Yeah, so if we end up in a scenario where we're at 0.3, there are two things to plug. If we are again, Plan C said these are scary words, right? But if we're in a perfect world, we're in there's a liquidity issue and everyone's happy. I've got no problem waiting for years if it needs to get the crypto back. I don't want I don't need it in a timely fashion, but other people are not in that position. So that's liquidity. Insolvency means there is a gap to fill. This is my belief. I believe there is a gap to fill. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I'm not going to tell everyone, everything's good. Let's put some hopium out there. I'm going to tell you what I think it is. And my speculation is that there is an insolvency issue. So I put together a liquidity pool of people that would be willing to fill that gap and construct a security stroke other offering that would allow that gap to be filled. And then you've got to look at, is there a future to the company? And that's where it would be, putting up the money. If you look at, in order to execute a merger and acquisition transaction, if needed. If not needed, then great. If it turns out that everybody can trust the board, trust the brand, and it's illiquidity and everything's good, then I've got a syndicate that can look at those two different elements. So if you look at, for example, what BlockFi did, BlockFi said, we don't want to suspend withdrawals. So they immediately got a liquidity provider, which was FTX. And then FTX said, we'll provide this liquidity while an M&A deal is being negotiated. And that decimated shareholder value, but at least there's a future for the company because the alternative is no future for the company. So we've put together a syndicate of investors that can fill in those gaps if they're needed, and at the very least, it means that if there is even a bankruptcy proceeding, they've got a duty to get the best offer, see all offers, and you need one offer so that then other people can come along and upbid that offer and get a better and better offer in some kind of auction. So now that is what we did, and that's what I've been working towards, putting that together, and we put together a team at Bank to the Future to make that happen, and we've got commitments of people that are interested in doing that.
Okay, next person is
Yeah, can
Jason.
we do the whole you don't need to say who you are, where you're from, or anything like that, but do disclose your interest. So are you a token holder, a shareholder, a depositor, or none of the above, or a combination of the above? Because I think it's important when people are asking their questions that I understand the context in which you're coming from.
I'm a depositor and a token holder, and my question is,
Okay.
Your token plan is described as a security token. I'm a U.S. non-accredited investor. How are you planning on using that model for us, since it's illegal for us to have securities?
Okay, so there's two approaches here. And ever since that was pointed out, we started working on a strategy. Firstly, at Bank to the Future, within our group of companies, we have an SEC-regulated broker-dealer. And that regulated broker-dealer is able to approach FINRA, and they have a good relationship with FINRA and a good track record with FINRA, and approach them to get a meeting around this is what we think is best for investor protections. That's approach one. The second approach is that after receiving over thousands of feedback from the community, We worked on an alternative structure that we think is an improvement from a regulatory perspective in terms of alleviating some of those regulatory risks by not using securities. And if this approach we're going to be putting forward to the board, and if that is the case, if that strategy works, then it would treat US, non-US, retail and non-retail all under the same circumstances, which is just the ideal. So what I want to say is thank you to all the community that have been putting forward your proposals and being proactive. It has helped tremendously, and I think we can do better than the Bitfinex model that we executed in 2016 as a result of understanding some of the new tools and new possibilities. And we have the regulations and the partners in order to execute that. Please understand, when we were doing the Series B funding round for Celsius, in order to make this possible for non-high net worth, we had to find lots of different partners, and no partner is interested in working with a company on the risk profile of Celsius. Bank to the Future is because we built ourselves in order to support this industry, and we have good relationships with our regulators, and we've disclosed things all along, and they understand our business model. And so we have that kind of relationship where we bespoke all of our processes unique to the crypto industry, and doing it in a way that there are two solutions there, which is a securities model approaching FINRA, and also a non-securities model. Here's what's the important thing. I don't want to create something that has another token. I don't want to do a Luna here where you suddenly have other tokens and then that has all this weird economics with the Cell token. I want to make sure that these are completely non-competing and extinguishing, tokens that extinguish, so that by the time the recovery is over, just like with Bitfinex, the token no longer exists. And if the company has a future by acting effectively and communicating effectively, then it can trade its way out of its issue and repay down some of that debt. And so these are the different types of models that we've been considering, so that you don't end up creating some weird ass scenario where there's some other utility token that's gotten, or you turn Cell into some kind of security because you combine it in some way. So we saw lots of those proposals, and we know that none of those are going to work legally, and create some weird thing where there's more than one token, which doesn't work well at all.
Okay, RNR, you're up next. So it's just buffering.
Hey, Simon, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I'm a depositor. Before Celsius in 2017, I was with BSave. Simon, really do appreciate you being the unofficial Celsius spokesman during this time. A question, and then a...
Do you mind if I just give some history on that as well?
Yes,
and then we'll go into your questions.
Absolutely.
So the history of this peer-to-peer yield model, it was created by Bitfinex as an order book. And Bitfinex was the one that innovated that model, where you can go onto a trading order book, and you can lock up your Bitcoin for yield so that speculators could use it in order to short and take out short positions. Then we invested and funded a company called BSave, and BSave put a user experience on top of a savings account user experience. The problem is that no one at BSave treated it as a low risk saving account rather than a higher risk security, and they didn't understand some of the risks involved. When we did the Bitfinex recovery, there was a haircut, and then all of the depositors at BSave didn't understand why they got a haircut because they didn't understand what they invested in, and therefore BSave had to go out of business, and Celsius ended up acquiring them. So we've got someone that was an original depositor or maybe shareholder, I believe, from BSave, which was a Bank to the Future portfolio company that Celsius ended up acquiring. Okay. Question.
Yeah, awesome. No, I appreciate it. Just my question. Obviously, Celsius on chain is making a bunch of moves, paying down loans. Do you see that as a good thing in terms of building up liquidity, making depositors whole, or do you see that as uh, preparation to declare bankruptcy? And then just a couple comments. Everyone knows the yield that's coming out each Monday is just fake numbers on a screen. I think every single depositor would be fine with yield getting turned off while liquidity is being built up. Everyone would be okay with very limited withdrawals with fees, as well as any type of 3, 6, 9 month, 12-month lockup with potential interest, so that Celsius could really, if they're able to open back up shop, they're able to tell and forecast what that kind of withdrawal will look like, what type of loyal customers will stay for a year for X percentage of interest. That could be done via an official poll from every user that's got deposits in there. All options. And then just one thing for people that have loans due, nobody wants to pay off their principal right now with a company that's potentially about to declare bankruptcy. If there's a potential to extend people's loans out until there's clarity, and once there's clarity, people will pay off their principal, and hopefully business as usual. Thank you for the time.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I recently put out a tweet. I got a number on a database saying that I've received approximately $4,000 today. And I don't want to receive that $4,000, but here's what we needed to do in the Bitfinex scenario. Here's the problem. Logical solutions often conflict with legal liabilities. And so what the lawyers would be advising will often conflict with what makes total sense. And at some stage, the Bitfinex board just needed to plow forward. And when they issued the token, in order to do that, people had to opt out of suing Bitfinex in order to receive, the reward. And so there is also a game of managing litigation here, because there is always going to be several bad actors that are going to fuck it up for all depositors, that go out on a selfish path rather than thinking about all depositors first. That's inevitable. So those types of things need to be considered. And if there is a breach of contract by not paying rewards, then just want to know that what may seem so logical to us is also trying to protect against certain legal challenges. Don't take that as legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, but the logic of what you just said, I completely agree with. I don't want fake database numbers that increases Celsius liability and makes the situation worse, especially in the case of needing to fill a hole. Now, what's my interpretation of paying down some of these debts? Well, I believe that it is an exercise in getting to the final number of what the haircut is. If it just turns out that there is no haircut, it's just an illiquidity issue, I'm much, much happier. But I do believe that this is making sure that all the movements are getting to the final point of what is the point, where are we right now, and what do we need to haircut. And I want to be ready for that plan. I don't want to be caught with my pants down when we get an announcement, just like we did with Voyager. I don't want to be caught in that scenario where then there is no influence from the crypto community, Alex, and the board, and we're just dealing with TradFi. That is what I tried to prevent from day one. And so how do I interpret it? I still believe, and I'm more than happy to be wrong. I'll be the first to come on this AMA and say, I am so glad that I'm full of shit. I should have just listened, had faith in the board. It was just a liquidity issue. They just needed more time. I was preparing. I wasted a load of money. I hired a bunch of lawyers. I literally came out of mourning of my father unnecessarily. I should have just left them to do what they needed to do. I'll be the first one to admit that if I'm wrong. I believe we need to be preparing for getting together a better solution in case it's not a liquidity issue and that it is an insolvency issue. And every action that I've seen implies that there is something that we need to prepare for.
Okay, we've got Al Micmac. You're next. One question, please. Thanks.
Oh, hi, everyone. This is Alex. Can you hear me okay, firstly?
Yep.
Yeah, can hear you good.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm a Celsius depositor, and I was also a shareholder. My interests mainly lie with my deposits and the deposits of everyone else. You've replied to 2 tweeted questions that I had already. One was related to crowdfunding, if there is a hole and the hole is small. And the other one was related to the mining assets, the physical assets within Celsius. And in that regard, terminology such as insolvency, during a bear market, when assets are being valued at the bottom of the market, and how that varies over time. So, for example, if you have an asset which I would consider to be potentially and exponentially increasing in value over the next few years, is that a long-term insolvency issue? Is that a short-term insolvency issue? And how is that considered? Because I know you said it's a legal question anyway, as to whether that could be financed or sold. And I think it's a pertinent point, as is the possibility of crowdfunding, if there is a small hole.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So, firstly, these are financial questions, legal questions. I'm giving my opinion. You can't rely upon that opinion, and you need to hire your own advisors, where you've actually got a contract where they have to give you the right advice and is qualified to do that. So the situation with the size of the hole depends upon the strategy. So Bank to the Future was already engaged with Celsius, and this is all public information. They emailed out their whole database. They brought me on to the AMA. Alex was getting ready to come on our show, getting ready to launch the Series B as soon as the due diligence was completed. That due diligence did not complete when it came to the regulatory part and the financial part. So that we are already have an existing contract to support them in doing the community part of their last funding round, and that could be done relatively easily. As long as we get complete transparency on the disclosures that would need to be made in order to make that. So that's why it's important to get to what is the financial position and what is the regulatory position. All regulatory issues would need to be disclosed, and all financial issues would need to be disclosed in order to make that possible. You can't just raise finance and then turn out the finance and regulatory issue is different to what was disclosed. So disclosures become very important. Then you need to figure out what type of investor is able to invest in that certain risk profile. Doing a pure crowdfunding for retail would require approval from a regulator. Not a chance in hell that any regulator is going to approve this for non-accredited investors at this stage, from my perspective. And then secondly, the subset of investors that you are able to do this without seeking approval and just doing the correct disclosures would make that possible. And that is possible if the number is at a certain level. If the number is larger than the millions and it goes into the billions, then the haircut approach is what I would state would be the more effective approach in order to fill such a hole. Those are the options. And everything depends upon full disclosure of the numbers. And remember that there has to be a future for the company. My belief, and everything I know after being involved in over 100 companies and ourselves, the regulations mean that I believe in the future there needs to be a securities license and there needs to be a banking license, depending on whether it's backed one-to-one or whether it's not backed one-to-one. So trading cannot begin again, from my perspective, compliantly until those things are solved. So any relaunching people need to appreciate those risks, and it would need to be under a new structure and a new roadmap that meets the regulatory obligations going forward, which is where we started to say, well, what we've got at Bank to the Future and other portfolio companies that we know strategically already have those licenses, Is there a deal we could do if it gets to proposal 3 that gives this a future in order to trade its way out of some of the challenges that it will experience if it needs to repay creditors based upon trading?
Okay, next is Andrew.
Hi guys. Hi Simon. Thanks so much for doing these AMAs. Just a overview. I am a depositor. I don't own any of the Cell token. I just have some Ethereum that's locked up in Celsius. So I think I speak for a lot of long-term crypto holders in that we don't necessarily want to sell or to receive like a dollar denominated amount of whatever money is left in Celsius if it goes bankrupt, and if there's some sort of restructuring. And furthermore, in the event of a bankruptcy, we probably won't get that dollar denominated amount until 3, 4, or even 8 years after the start of the bankruptcy proceedings, primarily because of how long it takes in the legal system. So that's what we've seen in that's what we've seen in when Mount Gox did that. So my question is, how can we make it so that at least some of those funds are like held in crypto, right? So I had my deposit in Ethereum. I'd be willing to take a haircut on that Ethereum as long as it, maintains it, or as long as it's still like Ethereum, right?
Yeah.
So how would that happen for us, or how can we ensure that that happens for depositors who choose to keep some of their money in the crypto that they that they held?
Awesome. Got the question. Okay. Yeah, sure. So this is exactly what I'm fighting for. Once we know the position of how many Bitcoin does Celsius have, so let's say they owe 100 Bitcoin and they've got 70. Once we know how many Ethereum and all the different tokens, then you can, and this is what I believe is the process that's been happening right now, with making sure that they're in a position where they know exactly, without risk, how many Ethereum, how many tokens, how many Bitcoin do they have. Once you know that, you then can put together a plan for opening up withdrawals. And if there is anything missing, then you got to haircut it, and you got to decide on the strategy for a haircut. And that strategy, from my perspective, was replace it with something, a bit like a bail-in, whether it be equity or debt, if there's a future for the company and it can trade its way out like Bitfinex, or an upside in another M&A group of entities that can give a future that addresses many of the things that would allow people to believe that there is a future for this company. And that haircut can only be managed through well, it can be managed in any way, but you can't have a debt in something like Bitcoin that, from my perspective, will significantly increase in value over that 8 years, and turn, for example, with Mt. Gox, a debt of 100, a few million into a few billion. That cannot be managed, and therefore the haircut needs to be denominated in something that has a stable value, like a dollar, over that time. And then, in order to gain access to that value, you need to get as many people to agree to an agreement and a settlement, and as fast as possible, so that then people can take that value and do with it as they choose. I.e., we've had a crash. This is why I wanted speed. By the time withdrawals were frozen, we've had like a 40% correction in the market. If people received that, they were essentially short Bitcoin, and they could have received that value and bought back Bitcoin, and be in a better position than when they were. And these are the types of things that need to be considered with decisive action. And this is what I wanted to try, and this is why I've been encouraging speed of execution while the market conditions work in those ways, so that they can trade their way out of this and have a future and a communication strategy where everyone's informed, everyone knows what they get, suck it up, execute, move forward. And so that's the way it would work. I do not want I do not want my Bitcoin sold here. I don't want to wait 8 years for my depositor. But here's the thing: if it moves into bankruptcy, then the board it's not going to be a bunch of people that believe that the future of Bitcoin is going to be worth loads of money. It's going to be done by conservative people that want to protect just in case Bitcoin goes to zero and they've lost all of the value, and they'll be protecting their ass from being sued. And so this is why I knew that this wasn't appropriate for TradFi. When I saw that the same bank that was working on the IPO was in charge of these types of advisory decisions, and the bankruptcy lawyers were being brought in, I said, I've got to go public with this. I've got to get the community to understand whatever I need to do, because I'm getting DMs from people that were in really nasty positions with their lifetime savings that put everything in Celsius. And so that's when I decided that I've got to come out, I've got to do stuff, I've got to break the silence. And so the way you do that, as I said, is you leave the crypto as it is, you get the haircut, and once the haircut is executed, you put together a decisive plan for people to be able to get any upside, or if the markets all work against you, accept that risk by having something that you can recover on that haircut. And that would be denominated in dollars because you can't have this ongoing, liability in Bitcoin that puts a company into bankruptcy when it was already just insolvent. And that the best decision Mt. Gox made was keeping the Bitcoin. But that was done in Japan. It wasn't done in the US. And so if this moves into bankruptcy, I want to make sure that the bankruptcy lawyers know that we've got proposals, we've got funders, and we've got the ability to get, if you believe that this is a better result. And we have also rallied a bunch of other people that have the pockets that don't have the same interest that we have. They're not depositors and they're not shareholders, but at least they do have liquidity, and you can then consider the best offer because you've got a duty to try and get the best offer in a timely fashion. And if we go about waiting for that to happen and then start trying to raise finance, they'll go to the company that has the money already. So this is why we've been trying to take the actions that we've been taking so that we can get the best result for depositors, then shareholders, and if there's a future for the company, then the token has a chance of surviving.
Okay, Gemfi, you're next. If you can unmute, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Azal Islam. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Clancy. So I'm a depositor and a Cell token holder, and I was wondering if we could run the polls on the Celsius network application for these options you put forward, Simon. And how would that affect the leadership of Mashinsky, since we are here clearly to support his vision and leadership despite everything what's happened. And as a passive Bitcoiner, and in the belief of the ethos of the Bitcoin as a layer one, I hope Clancy and Simon, you take this with charm. But as Mike Alfred is here in Spaces, I want to express my displeasure that he has been spreading FUD and attacking Bitcoiners on the Celsius network. You simply don't lift yourself up by putting others down slanderously. Thank you very much.
I would agree with you, and I'll answer a couple of that. Firstly, I think you'd all agree it's pretty evident, go through the AMAs, but Alex built a career out of slagging off others. And that's a reality. He made a lot of enemies because he said, take your money out of Coinbase, put it in here. Take your money out of Nexo, put it in here. We do everything for free. They're charging fees because they don't give a shit about you. And and this is a take your money out of a bank, put it in here. Those comments have consequences, and those consequences are that none of those people wanted to support it in its moment of need, and it led to a bunch of predatory offers in order to get revenge from some of the comments that were being stated. And it led to, what I believe is a very coordinated attack to expose some of the weaknesses in both the regulatory and financial model that the board were operating off. Now, what you have to appreciate, why is it silent right now? If this is backed 1-to-1 and is not a low risk saving account, it's a security, and operating an unlicensed securities business and people losing money is very serious and can lead to jail time. We don't want that, but that is the consequences, and we've seen it in the past, and we've seen it in Mt. Gox, and we've seen it in those that were creating DeFi exchanges that ended up in those consequences. And therefore, getting your own independent legal advice would be that you need to protect that position. That's the reality. That's the speculation. Whatever you want to do with that. Now, if it turns out there's not backed 1-by-1, then it's an unlicensed bank. And if it's an unlicensed bank, that's an even more serious thing. And so there are very, very serious consequences that are being considered here. And the moves that people make, and whether people lose money or make money, are really, really serious on those outcomes. And therefore, if Celsius has a future, it all depends upon the actions that were taken. And if there is an insolvency, can it be operated by the same board as a regulated securities business? Can they get approved in order to operate a regulated securities business? And can they get approval to operate a bank? And those decisions are based upon regulators. And so therefore, the decision needs to be made. Can this company move forward? And what I try to express to people is that at the end of this, after the DeFi crackdown that I told everyone was going to happen, and after the yield crackdown that I said was going to happen, and after all the advice that I tried to give the board over the years, is that you need to be ready for this scenario where those licenses are achieved. And that really depends upon, is it a peer-to-peer model, or has it moved into a security? And then did it move into banking inadvertently? And that's what, those are the important things. Now, let's take a look at the trolls. So I was not paying attention to any of this trolling. As I said, I was mourning the passing of my father. I did not need any of this. I did not want any of this. But I knew I could do something. And when more and more people were messaging me, I knew that if there was a way of protecting my deposits and my shareholding, and at the same time, all of these people that were messaging me saying, please do something, my life savings are on the line and I can't afford an operation and I'm feeling suicidal, and that's no exaggeration, then a human element comes in. And I need to do what I can do in order, given the information I have, and act with the ethics and integrity that I put as my values, and make sure that I'm not throwing people under the bus, but also trying to make sure I get the best result for the people that I can do within my power. And that's when I stepped into action, as it were. So these are the things to consider. Now, the trolls. So it's been brought to my attention that there were, 3 people that have been very, very skeptically, or have been contributed after the Luna or during the Luna situation. I haven't had time to go through all this stuff, to exposing some of the weaknesses. So firstly, if there has been manipulative behavior, and I guarantee you there has, manipulation has been a part of this market and the traditional markets. I was an investment banker. I was a market maker. I know the types of behaviors that happen in traditional markets, and they were hyper accelerated in crypto markets for a very long time. And they still are there, and they're never going to go away. That's why I've always told people, don't fuck with trading. The trading is where you're going to get on the wrong side of all this shit. People doing, shorting and borrowing and all the stuff. I said the returns are great enough without any of that shit, and all the short-term behavior. And so that's why I've always been working on products that are long-term focused, and discourage all of the behavior that fucks everybody up and makes them lose all their money, by just trying to get rich quick too soon, rather than having a more patient time frame and the long hodl approach and all the things I loved that Alex was promoting, and pushing people, into a more of an investor mindset. But unfortunately, he wasn't given the correct risk disclosures, and people did not understand what this product was, and they thought it did not entail some of the risks, that are required and legal obligations when operating a securities business or operating a banking model, that has various levels of insurance and various other protections and regulatory requirements in order to operate that model, and oversight and audit and all the other things, that are required when you're operating those models. And so my understanding is that there are three people. There is Mike, as you said. I have never engaged with Mike. I think I looked back at some of my tweets, and apparently he was doing a bit of trolling on me, and I was replying to him. And I don't know anything about him other than that. And this is the first time I've encountered him. Max Kaiser I know very well. I've known him since 2011. We spoke at the first Bitcoin conference together. We've made investments together. And we operated back in the day a fund called Bitcoin Capital that I disclosed. And everybody knows that I've been on Kaiser Report many, many, many times. All of the archives are out there. There's no secret here, that I've known Max for a very long time. But there has been no communication over Celsius with Max. I'm used to dealing with people that have very, very differing views. I've dealt with competing stable coins, where there's a coordinated attack on that stable coin in order to try and get a lot of money out of Tether and into USDC. And I've been on both sides of being a shareholder in both companies, and a shareholder in Coinbase when it was private. Block war debates, co-investing with people like Roger Ver, who was a shareholder in blockchain.com, that was a shareholder in Ripple Labs, been involved in, the founder of Ripple Labs selling an exchange to Mark Capellis, that had 80,000 Bitcoins missing, that led to the creation of not even knowing that he was operating out of a place of insolvency from day one. I'm very used to these things. I take a neutral stance. I am Switzerland. I am shareholders in multiple companies. I've kept myself not a high-profile figure with millions of followers on Twitter, and I only recently started creating more content on YouTube because I was preparing people for the Great Depression of the 2020s and all of the destruction that I knew was coming from inflation, getting on the wrong side of deflation growth and bank failures and all the things that are core to my mission that got me into Bitcoin in the first place, for a decade before that. Now, what do I know about Corey? Corey, I was invited onto the Swan Bitcoin podcast. I have no interest in Swan Bitcoin. We were exploring different funding rounds and various other things. We had no contractual agreement. Also, El Salvador is one of my big interests, supporting the government there and making Bitcoin legal tender. I was out there with Max Kaiser and the government. I'm supporting moving that mission forward. That is something I'm very, very passionate about. And bringing financial engineering to Latin America is something that I believe is really, really important to the future of Bitcoin, and our industry and our sector. And I appeared on the Swan Bitcoin podcast once because they asked me to appear on it. And that is the extent of those. And I keep relationships with both those people. I haven't even discussed the name Celsius Network with them once. And I've got nothing to hide. So dig deep, find what you want. You'll find that I have a relationship and everything I just disclosed. But I run a regulated company. I've survived every single bear market and been a consistent player because I don't fuck with stupid games. I've got more money than than I need to start messing around, risking my wealth, risking my licenses, risking my position and my integrity and the reputation that I built over the years, just to do some kind of craziness. I've never shorted anything on. I don't have exchanges with FTX. I don't have exchanges. I have an account with Bitfinex because we were involved in supporting the growth of this peer-to-peer model and various other OTC transactions. I'm a simple, straight-up guy, and I used to work in market making, and I left the job because I thought the games that people are playing in order to make money are disgusting. I don't want to be a part of it. I think long-term investing is the great equalizer. The HODL approach is the great equalizer, and there's no need for any of that stuff. And I've been consistently discouraging people from excessively taking risks and playing around with stupid things like that. Now, dig as deep as you want. You won't find anything. You'll just find somebody that has consistently built relationships with lots of people that have done lots of things that I disagree with. There's lots of things that I loved about what Alex was doing and what Celsius was doing. And there's lots of things that I thought were going to cause problems and that can be learned from. And there's the same with everyone. There's a ton of shit that I do where people are listening to me saying, I can't believe you're saying that. I wouldn't do it like that. But I'm just straight up, what you see is what you get.
Thank you, Simon.
Hey, so is it okay if I just quickly say one thing related to just the individuals that have kind of been, the community's been upset at. So I did put out a couple threads, pretty long threads to do with like what I feel were kind of coordinated attacks and some of the social media stuff. So I actually, to the detriment of my brain cells, I actually went and looked through the last 2 months of every single tweet from Max Kaiser, Corey, and Mike. And there's a reason why I only included Corey and Mike in my thread, is actually when I went through all of Max Kaiser's two months worth of tweets, and he tweets a lot. He's tweeting all the time. And he's essentially very toxic to anything that's not Bitcoin. So I didn't feel there was actually a higher percentage against Celsius compared to a lot of his tweets to do with a lot of other content. So I'm not trying to say that Max Kaiser hasn't done negative tweets towards Celsius. He absolutely has. But if you compare it to Mike and Corey, it's not even remotely the same. And so I just want the community to understand that. You can go through and look at 2 months worth of tweets if you want, but I would recommend not doing that. It's not good for your health. But basically, I detailed the thread. You can check out on my Twitter where I highlighted, specific stuff where, guys like Corey and Mike were intentionally creating substantial fear and contributing to the run. Whereas Max Kaiser definitely made some negative comments, but if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's just his normal thing. It wasn't anything abnormal where he was like against Celsius specifically, aggressively, or anything crazy. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Max Kaiser's opinion and not my own. Me and Max have had plenty of arguments over the years, and we've done business together over the years, and we are united by a common belief that Bitcoin is going to change the world. And Max has been through his things with altcoins over the years, and then arrived at the conclusion that everything else is a fucking nightmare, causes massive problems and ruins your reputation. And just sound upon, that Bitcoin is peace. And if you look at all of the different tweets over the years, you'll find hundreds of tweets. Now, if I was trying to do something sinister, when I knew, I retweeted Max saying that I'm one of the best investment bankers in Bitcoin because he knows my capabilities. He knows what I've done. And even though he knew this politics was going on with Celsius, he tweeted that and I retweeted it. Why did I do that? If I had some sinister plan in the background, I'd be keeping all of that a secret. But I tweeted it because I wanted people to know, of course, I have this relationship. And has Max done things that have caused harm to Celsius? Well, clearly that has, and that's not my game. That's Max's game. That's that's him. I do not take sides in these things. I get on with what the job is at hand. I invest in the future of finance, I diversify widely, I protect for a number of different outcomes, and I try and mediate when there's politics going on by competing companies that are doing things that may be out of line with my ethics and integrity. And the first time you will publicly find me really getting aggressive over this shit needs to happen now, I would normally be behind the scenes organizing those things, was when I realized that this Celsius stuff requires a different call to action. And therefore, I took the approach to the board. I gave it to TradFi. I told them what to do. I gave it to the board. And finally, after all of it, I said, we need to get community support because Alex cannot speak right now because there is bigger things going on in terms of legal liabilities and every single word that he's saying being scrutinized and the consequences of that. So that's just the fact of how it is.
Hey, Simon, this isn't, I don't want you to give any kind of legal advice, but, if it was, okay, let's not go there. Sorry, I'll just let you guys continue the questions.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I won't go there.
Okay, who's next? Is up?
Okay, next is.
And if we want, if someone really wants to ask me a tough question, put your hand up. This is your time. If you want to hide behind Twitter and spread a bunch of FUD, I'm okay with that too. But come on the AMA and ask your questions away. We're not filtering who's who. We're just literally taking the list, as Ard is saying, and you can come on and ask me a question. I'll give you a straight up answer.
Okay, so Chrome Slice is next with a question related to bankruptcy.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Plancy. Hey, Simon. Hey, Azad. Thanks for having me up. Simon, I'm going to check out your YouTube after this. You're very, very knowledgeable on this topic. I'm not currently a Celsius holder, but I just had a question. I was starting.
By Celsius, do you mean token or equity
Token.
or deposit? You don't own any tokens?
Correct.
Okay, are you a depositor or a shareholder, or none of those?
None of the above, but
okay.
I was thinking of looking into purchasing some Celsius. Now that it's at a low, I do realize it is a risk. But the question that I had is...
Okay, so potential token speculator, would that be the correct category with no skin in the game yet?
Correct.
Okay.
I did read an article recently about potential bankruptcy, and if that were to happen, then Goldman Sachs was interested in possibly acquiring the company. What do you think about that? What is the likelihood of that happening, and what do you think that could do to the Celsius token?
Okay, so this is why I came out. So when I first went public, I saw who was in the board meeting, and I'm under NDA to not disclose who was in that meeting. And I knew how that system works. Now, there's publicly available information, which is Citibank is involved. And I do know the team at Citibank, and I know people at Goldman Sachs. Before Bitcoin, I was in investment banking. I left in 2006. I built relationships in my time there. I knew how this system works. Here's how it works. You put together a team of what they call directors or VPs in the investment bank to pitch the business. The VPs and directors, they're not directors like a board at Celsius, for example, that are real decision makers. They head up a department. They then hand over to a bunch of associates, which are more senior people, and they have a team of analysts underneath them. The analysts go out there and they find the people to work with. So it will say, we need to get into blockchain. We need to protect ourselves and make sure that we're getting as much information as possible about this new emerging industry so that we can actually understand it before we get disrupted or before something happens. If a central bank digital currency launches, then we're in the peer-to-peer model and we need to make sure that we're on top of what's happening there. Then they will go to as many companies as possible. And I know, because I'm a shareholder in those companies that were dicked around for years while they put together a plan and on how they're going to support that company. And then they sign off and everything's good up to a year later, they then go up to the top and they need to get it signed off by the executives. The executives have much, much bigger fish to fry than this tiny little piece of shit project on the side. And then they say, no way are we taking that risk. We could, excuse me, I got a bit of a cough and I get a bit excited. Let me just grab some water. And so the executives then say no because it doesn't meet their risk profile. And even if the team were enthusiastically wanted to do it, they then go back and say no. That is what I believe has already happened. Why do you think Celsius keeps changing the team? Because I believe that this type of shit is happening. TradFi is not set up to move fast. They're set up to go slow, to protect the interests. And everybody's got a lawyer that is protecting different interests. Alex will have his own lawyer that's protecting his interests and telling him what to do. Celsius will have its own lawyer that's protecting the interests of the company and telling them what to do. The bank will have their own lawyers protecting their own interests and telling them what to do. I'll have my own lawyer protecting my interests and telling me what to do. And the bankruptcy will have their own lawyers telling them what to do and what interest to protect. So that's just the reality. That's what happens when you don't act decisively and you don't follow an execution plan and you don't communicate the situation and get take of the situation as fast as possible. And that's when brands are damaged beyond repair. And that's when boards are ousted beyond repair. That's what I tried to prevent. And that's the situation. What was the original question? Oh, Goldman Sachs. Okay. So when I saw that Goldman Sachs or the FUD, the rumor that Wall Street Journal released, saying that Goldman Sachs is fishing around, I immediately said, I want to puke. Go back to the tweets. You can find them there. And I do want to puke because I knew that I needed to get some engagement from the community. And it was just a reflection of how I felt at the time. I don't want Goldman Sachs touching my deposits. I don't want Goldman Sachs managing my shareholding. And I don't want Goldman Sachs over any of this stuff. And that fight, look back. I want to do what's right and make sure that the right offers are out there. And that's when I decided to get involved. I also contacted the people that I know at Goldman Sachs that would be involved in such a project, and they said, we're not involved, off the record. And then I immediately went out and I tweeted, my contacts at Goldman Sachs have said that this is all BS. This is FUD. Good news, but there are other sharks swimming around that will not do this in what I believe will be the best interest for the community. We need to apply some pressure because we're all going to get caught with our pants down if these sharks are continuing to swim around. My belief is that Goldman Sachs would not go ahead with this, and even if they wanted to, it wouldn't get sign off from the top. And I believe that the same with the other banks, the other that have been around. And I just been involved in too many of these transactions at the center of financial innovation. By the time anything gets signed off, it's too freaking late. And that's just the way it works. And that's what I want to prevent. And if they come and do a brilliant freaking job and outbid any of the solutions that we put together, great. I'd love a better result than what we can come up with.
Okay, I'm getting quite a few DMs on Twitter. So if any of you have tough questions for Simon, as he's requested, please feel free to DM me with that tough question. And those who put their hands up on Twitter Space, we'll put you next. So let's get Eric.
Hey, thanks for having me. A couple questions. I've been a cell token holder, small cell token holder since 2017. I did around
just
60...
one question, please. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just disclosing his position, which is good.
Yes. Thanks, Simon. I've met Simon a bunch of times, met Alex dozens of times at various crypto conferences. I have probably 90% of my crypto net worth on Celsius, unfortunately, including my son's college education fund. And I'm not kidding about that. During Consensus, Alex was running around telling friends of mine and people close to him that Celsius was in trouble. This was about 24 hours before he turned the lights off. When I got the phone call from someone who is very trustworthy and somewhat within the Celsius community or team, I immediately moved my funds from my Earn account to my custody account on Celsius. Do you think, Simon, that the custody accounts are going to be treated any differently if bankruptcy were to happen from the earn accounts, meaning the custody accounts get paid out first over the earn accounts? And my second question, and I want to thank you and my condolences to you in the loss of your father. However, you also, you were a part of their equity round, or you were a proponent of their equity round, and you knew that they were moving from a peer-to-peer company, peer-to-peer lending company, which I was a big fan of, to more of a securitized hedge fund of sorts, I guess, for lack of a better term. And you didn't raise the red flags when you were doing their equity round, and now all those red flags are being raised after the fact of their gambling type of positions that they were taking with my funds as well as your funds and everyone else's funds on this call. So why are the red flags being raised now about their position from a peer-to-peer platform, lending platform, which seemed pretty conservative and good business model, versus their more gambling approach to what they're doing now with our funds? Thanks.
Okay, cool. I'll put the disclaimers out again. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not legal advice. You can't rely on anything I'm saying. What I say could be completely wrong and inaccurate, and don't make any bets or decisions or buy any tokens or short any tokens or buy any stocks or move funds or do any of that based upon what I'm saying. This is just information you can take to your advisors. I believe there is a significant legal difference between custody and funds that you are lending out. And it depends upon the structure. Just saying you are a custodian does not make you a custodian. A custody is a legal regulated activity that requires licenses and requires some kind of trust structure or some kind of custody structure. And therefore, you have to get everything signed off that you have the correct processes and insurance and various other things in order to be a custodian. And so therefore, if that custody was managed and licensed in the correct way, then there would be some kind of legal segregation from the funds at risk. And the funds at risk are the ones that are being lent out. And the ones that are being lent out mean that it would be treated differently than custody. Now, just saying it's custody does not make it custody. And so I just think that the difference is lawsuits and litigations that all of the lawyers are going to be trawling through, which is why I wanted to make sure that everybody had a head start, a recovery plan was executed in order to receive upside and compensation. You need to accept certain terms or you pull back from those terms and therefore you enter into a legal agreement that may not be financially more beneficial. And that's how it works with Bitfinex. And so that's what I was trying to support. Now, when we did 2 rounds of due diligence on Celsius, and we have a due diligence checklist, in which case these documents need to be provided. And we were when we did the funding round, they were operating off a peer-to-peer lending model according to all the documents that they disclosed to us. And they provided all of those such documents. When we did the second funding round, we, as you will see, go back through the records, you will see that we said we're ready to go live, and that went on for 8 months. Alex started saying on his AMA, we're going live, and we had a bit of a fallout that was publicly done on YouTube, where Alex said, we're going live, and then he kind of threw us under the bus and said, Bank to the Future doesn't have the licenses, and therefore this is delayed. When we, and I went on my YouTube channel, and then the Celsius team reached out saying sorry, and then that issue was resolved, and I said let's get back on track again, and why throw us under the bus? The due diligence hasn't been completed. As soon as the due diligence is completed, we can get this round live. The due diligence never completed, and it was stuck on regulatory and financial. And that never completed the final phase, so the round never went live. And then in the middle of that, this situation arose, and all of that is publicly available, which is why I can say that, because there was a bit of a public thing, and we just were bombarded for months with support tickets from the Celsius community saying when live, when equity pitch. And we were constantly replying, saying it will be live as soon as the Celsius team has completed the due diligence. We saw the company, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here. We saw the company go from approximately 40 people to 800 people in the time that we were trying to do that. And in such fast growth, the left hand couldn't speak to the right hand. It was very hard to get decisions signed off. And people did not have the information in order to pass that due diligence. We kept trying to support Celsius in making that happen and having as many solutions as we could possibly give to them to make that happen. And various different people were kept being pulled in, and people were leaving the company, people were joining the company. And we kept having to start again over and over again, but that process did not complete. So I personally believe that the due diligence worked. And I think that at some stage, something happened due to the rapid growth of the company that completely changed the way the company was being operated in order to keep up with depositors' demands that were expecting yields. And therefore, something changed in that time frame.
I just wanted to quickly add as well. I sat in on like weekly calls, AMAs with Alex, for months and months and months. There was many times where people in the community asked the question, what is taking so long with this funding round? I mean, dozens of times over the course of, 8 months or whatever, where people asked, when's the funding round coming? There was never a single time where Alex actually said, this is because we're still going through the due diligence or it's being delayed on our side. It was always, it's coming next week, it's coming next month, it's right around the corner, we're waiting on Bank the Future. There was all sorts of reasons, but it was never, we haven't provided the paperwork or we haven't done the due diligence on our side. But yeah, I just want to add that.
Yeah, and I also want to add, they did provide a lot of due diligence. The team were working hard. It was just those 2 final points that we were waiting to complete on.
Okay, next speaker is Matty.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Simon, I was on with you yesterday as well, and you should know that
disclose your interests?
I have no interest. I don't hold any Celsius tokens, and I don't have any deposits or shares in Celsius. I tried opening a Celsius account one time. I can't from Israel, and that was that. I like yourself.
Just before you start, that I'd like to hear tough questions from people that own Cell tokens and all that stuff. No disrespect, Matt. We'll take your question, but please, if you guys are going nuts on Twitter, step up. Ask your questions. We can get those questions answered. So yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, didn't.
And maybe could we make that condition? If you don't, this will be the last question from someone that doesn't have a token, doesn't have a deposit, and doesn't have any shares. Can we only take questions from someone who's got skin in the game? Sorry. Yeah, let's carry on.
No worries. Well, what I was going to say is that I tend to scuff my nose at these type of crypto solutions, and I firmly believe that you shouldn't chase bad money with good money, and which I think CoinFlex is trying to do at the moment. It did pique my interest, and I saw your interview on Digital Asset News. I watched it twice, and I have to say that publicly I'd like to endorse the plan. Honestly, this is the very best solution that I can think of, because every other path just seems very bad and very dark, and this actually gives people something right now. I don't know if I was holding tokens or equity or anything like that on Celsius, if I would take the offer, but the Celsius community is very strong and very diehard, and I think that this can actually work, and it's worth a shot. In any case, I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to say that publicly. I've written about it in my newsletter, which goes out to journalists and YouTubers and project founders and stuff like that. That'll be going out within the next hour. So thanks a lot, Simon, for your time and effort in this tough times.
Okay, awesome. And the Celsius community kicks ass. The Bitfinex community at the time sucked. I'm just saying that from experience. Everybody under the sun was saying Bitfinex is a scammer. Bitfinex is awful. Bitfinex has stolen our money. there was nobody getting behind Bitfinex apart from us, because we knew that they were being portrayed, because they never did any marketing. And we knew, I knew that this was being done in the correct way at the time from all of the due diligence that we did. So we got behind it, and a bunch of other shareholders did. And suddenly Bitfinex went from the enemy to being the savior of the market, as it were. And it led to the 2017 bull market and everything that followed, and an incredible return on investment for investors. I'm not saying that's going to happen again. This could all go horribly wrong. And there's risk in all of these proposals. The environment's changed, but the Celsius community absolutely kicks ass. And that is, what Alex did incredibly well. His marketing was significantly better than mine. But I would say that my disclosures and risk warnings were significantly better than Celsius's. He built a company from 40 to 800. I haven't done that. We've been conservative. We survived every bear market and never done layoffs, because we've always been careful. And we never needed VC funding, and we were funded purely by our community and Bitcoin. And we stuck true to our ethos so that we could remain independent in our decisions and not be taken down a different direction. That's just my personal style. Slow and steady wins a race. I believe that growing too fast is very problematic, and the companies that are announcing layoffs right now are all the ones that get over bullish in the bull market and end up in shit during the bear market. And I've seen that time and time again. But the Celsius community definitely kicks ass. It was one of the fastest funding rounds we had on Bank to the Future, and it was one of the highest valuation increases that unfortunately that no longer exists because of this situation. But we would like to put together a scenario that does give some kind of upside and some kind of future, given that the world has changed. The world has changed. Yield as we knew it will not be the same. It will not exist from my perspective. And it will be securities and it will be banking. And therefore, it needs a team that can get the regulatory permissions and has relationships with regulators in order to operate such a business, and gets the right mix of financial innovation in order to walk that very, very tight line between compliance and financial innovation. And it needs risk managers. And I think Alex was doing an incredible job of attracting people that wanted to work for the organization. There are some incredibly talented people within that organization, and many of them have reached out to us to support. We are very grateful for what Alex has actually built. And now we just need to decide, what is the next plan? Is it an unwind? Is there no rescue? Is it a liquidity issue? Is there a return for the board? Is there a return for the company? That's the decision, my friends. That's the decision the community needs to make. And we created a page on banktothefuture.com/Celsius. That's BNK to thefuture.com/Celsius, because we wanted to hear as many views as possible, because we do have this tool. Tether is a shareholder. We've had a relationship with Tether for a long time, and the Bitfinex team. Interestingly, Celsius came to be because of the situation with BSafe that was a result of what happened in the disaster with Bitfinex. That only happened because I was a shareholder in Kraken that was able to put together a package around the Mt. Gox, and that learning led to that. And then it comes all full circle that Tether is now a shareholder in Celsius, and Bank to the Future is a shareholder in all of those companies. And we've learned from all of that, and we believe that we have a plan with the correct level of disclosures so that people understand the risks, and the ability to move as fast as possible with licenses and regulations, and a team that is able to get those registrations. You're not able to be a board member of a regulated company if you executed a plan that led to a lot of people losing money on an unregistered security or unlicensed bank. That's just the hard facts. That's the reality. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to hear? My shares could be worthless, but as I said, depositors first. Once depositors have a good solution and they're satisfied, then let's salvage the equity. And if we can salvage the equity, then there's something that token holders can look forward to from there.
Hello?
Okay, next speaker is Alan Austin.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me up. Hi Simon, I appreciate you being on here and taking the time. I sent you a DM on this. I'm just curious. I'm a couple things. I'm a series. I was a first round Series A investor through Bank to the Future, A shares. Also an early sell token holder. Still own a little bit. Have a little bit on the platform as well. Have also managing director of Litecoin Foundation, and we work with Celsius. Had many conversations with Alex and the team over the years and got to know them. But I'm just kind of more of a simple question. I wanted to get what your understanding is of the Celsius mining operation, and the reason is, I guess I'm trying to clarify: are they in fact a subsidiary of the main company? And the other part of that is, I always found it kind of weird, as a Celsius shareholder through Bank to the Future, there's been very limited communication since that happened about a year and a half ago. And it's kind of weird when I understand part of that is the fact that, you were waiting for information from them. But I also think it's odd that here we have this lack of communication. Then out of the blue a couple of months ago, or whenever that was, Celsius announces their intentions to do an IPO with just a mining subsidiary. And it seemed without, again, any communications to investors on what the purpose of that is, how that impacts investors in the Celsius Network LLC. And I'm just curious if you have any take on this, or are they connected, and so forth, if that makes sense.
What I can say is my due diligence team will know the answer to that, and I just haven't taken the time to actually get that answer. I think it's an important thing, and I believe the due diligence will certainly have an answer to that. My ethos is always make your interests. If you are a CEO of a company, then any interest that you have, your share. The way that I've always worked, I've been caught off guard by companies that create multiple companies, and then the interest of one company, and then they create another startup, and that's my work. That's the type of CEO that I go absolutely berserk with. If I'm investing in you, I want 100% of your time and energy and effort creating value into the company that I invested in. Some people don't share those ethos. I believe Alex did share that ethos, and so my belief, speculation, is that if I looked into that, it's probably a subsidiary. And if it's not a subsidiary, there's probably a contract that would give the shareholders the value in some way, and it would have been a regulatory reason if not. There's very exotic structures that are required, unfortunately, to operate a crypto business on a global scale. So I don't have the answer to that, and I'm sure the DD team will have the answer to that. To do an IPO on a subsidiary creates problems. I didn't like that. I'd rather see an IPO on the actual company, but there may be a reason for that. So what is the mining company right now? I believe it's an asset that's held by the holding company. And if it is, if it moves into, I need to understand, and this is where I started to ask questions. When they made the announcement of the mining, our team started to ask questions around how is this yield being generated? Because if it's peer-to-peer loans plus mining, then that is a very different model to what we understood the model was. Therefore, there are different requirements if that is the model. We never quite got the answer to that. And so if they're investing in different things, then that's, from my perspective, not a lawyer, that's a security at that stage. If it's generating yield in different ways to the peer-to-peer model. And then if it turns out that there's a hack when it was reported, then that is now fractional reserve unless it's covered by balance sheet of the underlying company. And so these were questions as part of the due diligence process. that we wanted to get answers to, and caused delays. And these are normal questions. And so, is the mining subsidiary is it one of the company assets? I hope so, because if it moves into Chapter 11, then this would be one of the assets. But this is why I don't want to move into Chapter 11, because I believe in the future of Bitcoin. And somebody that doesn't believe in the future of Bitcoin will look at a mining business right now and say, this is a piece of shit. Let's get it off to the lowest bidder, the highest bidder that offers a piece of shit offer. And so, that's why I don't want non-crypto businesses that don't know how to value these assets. I remember we were involved in an IPO of a mining company. The Australian regulator was asking the most just ridiculous questions on how to value that operation, based upon just their understanding of Bitcoin mining, and it was just so painful. And the things that they were asking, TradFi do not know what to do with these things. They won't make the right decisions. It's only fellow crypto people that understand the value in the future of Bitcoin and understand some way of who the right people are to get the most value out of these things. And this is what I would want to do everything to avoid. I believe, that's it. Full stop.
Okay, next speaker is Ellie. Hi, Ellie.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Hi, Simon. Hi, Clancy. Thanks for hosting this, to both of you. I just wanted to,
Can you disclose your interest? Are you
Yes.
token shareholder or depositor?
Yeah, so
Or
I'm
all?
a depositor, and I just like the listener from two previous listeners mentioned, I also just moved my funds into custody, and I have some funds as like collateral for loans. I just wanted to know just a little bit more. I know you alluded to how these kinds of holdings would be treated differently than like those that are in earn. But can you go into a little bit more detail on how it works for non-earn funds?
I don't think I'm the expert on this. This is a question I would ask a lawyer. And look, if this moves to the next stage, then everybody should obviously have their own lawyers depending on the level. But with Mt. Gox, there was lots of coordinated legal action to save people a lot of fees. And the community had to come together, the creditors had to come together, and then they had to coordinate on all of this understanding. If this is where it goes, there will be coordination and community coordination to make sure that the small people that had small deposits are benefiting from those that can afford and have much larger vested interest. And so, although I probably can't give you the answer to that question right now, I'm telling you there'll be lawyers all over this, and there will be coordination of the community, just like there was in every other action like this. So you will get your answers, and there's people that are a lot smarter and clued up on the law than me that will answer those questions, and they're probably already creating blogs on it right now to make sure that they're the credible expert lawyer that gets in front of this, and all of the lawyers that are in crypto will all trying to make sure that they're in front of this and they're selected. So information will not be an issue in the future. Having said that, I've just got the simple model that I know that normally in these types of proceedings, creditors come first, and in this case, depositors are creditors. Shareholders come second, and token holders don't have any rights. And so that is the price that token holders paid for liquidity, and that is the price that shareholders paid for no liquidity, and that is the price that creditors paid by putting deposits when you lent them to Celsius. So it will go in that order. Now, whether there's a different order I think is just really a legal question between earn versus custody versus collateral, and I'm not going to speculate on that. If there's a lawyer in the community, please create a blog, please create a Twitter space, and enlighten people on your opinions. Do your community work, because there's lots of people that could answer that question better than me.
Okay, next person is Broken Crypto Bag Holder.
You there?
Are you there?
Hello, me?
Hey,
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, great.
Disclose your interest.
Sure.
So you depositor, token holder, shareholder.
Hey, Simon. Thanks very much for holding this. I met Celsius through your platform. So I am a shareholder, a depositor, and a sell token holder. So,
okay.
Basically, I just want to say a few things first. If everything goes to, to zero, it's going to hurt me, but, it's not going to, I'm not going to hang it myself. So basically that's my position. So my heart goes to those out there worried, with the situation. It's understandable, but, my outlook is positive. So, basically, I like to keep the community together here, the spirit forward. So I support the squeeze. These people that want to hold the funds for whatever amount is needed. So so I support the squeeze, as I was saying, as we can do as the crypto community, against this Mike's alphas of Twitter, Mike. So if you're hearing this, Mike, if you're happy with this situation, you're a sociopath, and you know what the end for sociopath is when they're found out. So I support depositors first, because prepares us for the worst, and Celsius and Alex silences and actions, are hopes for the best. So Simon, my question to you is I'm pretty sure this one you cannot say, but I was wondering who are the people and the institutions you're looking at to help us, Celsius. If you can tell this, the other question would be now that Celsius seems, to be scrambling there to find this liquidity, and going back to normal, and maybe sort of fix a percentage of the problem. So what is a realistic figure that you're looking at right now with the information you have?
Okay.
Thank you.
Got you. So let me comment on the short squeeze. Look, if that's your game, that's your game. I'm not a trader. It would really damage my position to be able to have influence if I was a prick that was buying tokens or shorting tokens on the side while making announcements on Twitter. Firstly, if I did that, put me in prison. And I know that, all of the companies that have access to my accounts, if they were subpoenaed and that information was need to be provided to them, so be it. Because I got nothing to hide there. If you found out that I was participating in buying tokens or shorting tokens and then having some kind of influence upon the decision, I would be done for market manipulation. And I do not need that for my business that I've worked a decade of my life, day and night, and all of the team members that I'm accountable to that rely upon our decisions for their income. I would not put any of my team at such risk, and I would not risk everything that I've worked for just to make a quick buck, when quite frankly I'm more financially free and I never need to work again, and I'm happy with what I got, And even if I lose all of my money and all of my shares in Celsius, it makes zero difference to my end financial position, because I spent the last 2 decades of my life preparing for every single outcome that the world can try and throw at me. I've been trying to share with other people how they need to diversify. And if you look at any of my videos with Alex was saying things, on the Bank to the Future YouTube channel, and I was saying there's risks here. You need to diversify. There are risks here, and I was trying to add that in. And so, you can look back and judge those AMAs and stuff, and you can see my style versus Alex's style. But I want to work here for the best result, and that's what I want. That's really genuinely what I want. So me participating in some kind of speculative attack on a token or holding a token, and then me tweeting it and promoting it, people will make financial decisions based upon those tweets. And if they lose money based upon those decisions and they say that I was encouraging them to participate in that, I'm fucked. I'm done. I can't help anybody at that stage. And you really don't want me playing around with such games. So if you want to create conspiracy theories that I don't own any cell, firstly, I did notice that there's a tiny amount of cell in my Celsius account from when I was messing around with something in the beginning, and apparently I was receiving a tiny amount of my rewards in cell. I'll disclose that. I'll put a screenshot of that. It's an insignificant amount. I've never bought cell in my life. And you want to interpret that as me not being part of the community. That's exactly why I'm able to be in this position, to be able to do this, because I would have to be silent if I own those positions or I was participating in any type of short squeeze. Now, if you want to go out there and trade and short and make money and not make money and do what's right, eat your heart out. Just don't lobby me to buy sell tokens, and don't lobby me to participate in things that are going to compromise my position. I've disclosed everything, and if in years to come this all goes through lawyers and bankruptcy proceedings, they're going to go through my account and they're going to figure out whether I bought sell or whether I shorted sell. And look, I'm straight up. I'm straightforward. That's not, I know people that have gone to prison for that type of shit. I'm not about to mess with anything like that. And you may not understand that. I understand if you're someone anonymous on Twitter, then you might want to engage in that type of behavior. But remember, this is the type of behavior that got us in shit in the first place, by telling people to do things without the correct level of disclosures and risks, that then will lead to people crying to regulators when it goes wrong, and then leaving TradFi and regulators intervening in our market because they didn't know what they were doing or what they're involved in. I've spent a lifetime trying to avoid all that shit. I don't want to be involved in that shit. I left investment banking to get away from that shit. It's just not my game. I'm not judging you. I know people that made lots of money through playing these games and all sorts of stuff. It's just not my game. It's too easy to make money without that shit. And that's the same type of shit that blows people up and leaves them fully exposed and all their money in something that they didn't fully understand. And if there is anything that anyone gets out of that, gets out of this, I share your love. I share your love for the community. I share the fact that people are suffering financially. And I know what it's like to lose everything. I've been there. I've been deep in debt. I know what it was like when my father lost all of his money in the stock market. But what came from that was the ability for me to figure out why they lost their money. And that led to me a lifetime of trying to understand everything about money that I could, and over 2 decades of dedicating my life and writing books that got people into Bitcoin in 2011, and creating products that paid out thousands and thousands of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all sorts of stuff along the line. My final belief that Bitcoin's the important thing here, and everything else around it needs to be risk managed and is probably a security. And therefore, as long as the disclosures are there, and people, have transparency and do have suitability tests and do know what they're getting into, then all good. There is a future for all the other shit that sits around the side and all the other stuff that sits around the side, just like you have gold, and then you have stock markets, and then you have regulations around those stocks, and you have innovation that comes through, and this DeFi side, this CeFi side, and the on-chain innovation, and then competing with central bank digital currencies, and all the things that I've been trying to forecast and get people ready for as we transition to the next phase and the next cycles, that I was warning people against with this yield and DeFi crackdown, and what comes next, and what drives what I think would be the next bull market, and how to protect themselves from being wrong. That's what I dedicated my life to.
Hey, Simon, is it okay if I just quickly, I appreciate you saying everything you said there. I have talked to many people in the community, and I just wanted to, for the people that are doing the short squeeze, I just wanted to shed a little bit of light as like a middle person. Basically, like the community, does feel very strongly that, just as you do, I think you share the same sentiment as the community, very much so. When it comes to this coordination of attack, the way you expressed it during this call was, expect that. That's the markets. But yeah, definitely, you do believe, there was some social media stuff going on, as well as just like in the regular market manipulation. So the community has very much rallied, behind this and done everything. I guess there's probably a lot of people in the community. Again, I don't want to speak for them. I'm just speculating. But that feel like a lot of lack of empowerment, maybe just because their assets are in the app. So what can they do? They can, actively participate in the squeeze. Now, I do feel the people that started the squeeze have done a very good job of, for the most part, what I've seen is they've told people, only put in what you're willing to lose. Put in a small amount. Just so there is. There's a spectrum of people. Some people are not doing that, but there is a core group that started it. Shout out to Otis, who has really told people, like, be careful, this is risky, put in a small amount if you choose to. So yeah, I don't think it's fair for the community, just my own perspective, for the community to like say, you're not on our team if you're not participating in this. But I guess from their perspective, they might think like, this guy's got, clearly a lot of funds, he could really help us out here. But again, you've outlined very well that if you bought 1 million Cell token and then posted that on Twitter, that could put you in a position like a lot of people that are they're saying for you to do this or whatever. They're not a public 10-year person in the crypto space that has a business that has a lot of things that there's a lot of variables at play here. So I think hopefully the community can understand a little bit more your tough position you're in. You can absolutely support. I believe you can fully support without buying the Cell token. In the future, the only way the Cell token has value is we get through this situation. And that is, in my opinion, what Simon, is doing. He doesn't have to do any of this. He's choosing to help the community, like he's already mentioned, he doesn't have to be doing this. And so by choosing to take all this time to in any way plan for a worst case scenario, it's actually in the best interest. Like he's doing more for the Cell token than I'm seeing anyone else doing currently. So I think maybe the community can see your side of it. Maybe you can see their side of it. And we can focus on the most important thing, which is just getting through this and getting everyone the option to take out their funds.
Yeah, and it didn't need to be division. That wasn't there. There's not competing things here. There's just a community of people that's doing something that they feel is useful. Go ahead, eat your heart out. And I'm doing what I think is useful. People should hold me accountable. They should be skeptical. They should ask about my interest. And I hope by now you've discovered that it isn't just altruistic. I've got tens of millions in multiple accounts on Celsius. I've got a community of shareholders that own shares in Celsius. I own shares in Celsius. And I've disclosed that from day one. I would like that deposit to be something, and I would like those shares to be valuable. So there's completely an element of self-interest. That's just what it is. I said it as it is. And do I care about people telling me that they've lost their life savings. I'm a pretty sensitive guy, you know. You can look at some of my previous broadcasts where I've fucking been crying on tears around seeing the effects of things that most people would be like, "Who the fuck is this pussy?" You know, because I care, and that's just who I am. What you see is what you get. I care about people. I don't like people losing money, but you know, that is part of this game of reinventing the future of finance, and I'm cool with that. I've lost lots of money. The reason I consider myself pretty experienced right now is because I've done lots wrong, and I still got caught on the wrong side of this. I'm okay with that because I've disclosed all of my strategies, and I've even publicly shown exactly how I invest at retirementplanb.com. You know, so it literally it's all out there. Now I understand trawling through decades of history and my documentaries before even Bitcoin existed is not something that people can do if you're new to the community. But someone will do it, and you know, I think I've made mistakes, I've got things wrong, but I tell people when I do things wrong, and I tell people how it is, and I disclose my interests, and I always try and tell people the risks that need to be mitigated and managed.
Okay, next speaker is RP.
Did we do RP already?
Hi.
Nope.
Hi.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
You there,
Yeah.
RP?
Hi. So first of all, I would like to thank you and thank Plan B, so helping us in a bad situations.
Plan C, you sinned. Plan C.
Plan C, yes. Sorry. So I am a depositor. So I put a lot of money, around 50% of my crypto into the Celsius. I never hold a Celsius coin. I only believe in the fundamentals of crypto, like a Bitcoin. So my question is, I'm in US, so I'm a non-accredited investor. So so you are a tokenized debt. So how it works for the non-accredited investor? So so your plan is independent or dependent on the non-accredited investor?
Yeah, so Banks for the Future currently only has licenses to work with accredited investors and high net worth investors outside the US, accredited investors in the US, and a subset of those. We have active applications that we're making for an investment banking license. We currently have a virtual asset service provider application, and we have several retail applications. And by the way, you know, they're going to get a lot more difficult once you know, if we end up involving ourselves in Celsius. So as a business, you know, it's not necessarily the best move to do this, but I believe that it's the right move to do this. And so if it is involved in securities, then we spent a couple of years beta testing a version of Celsius that would work in compliance with securities laws. At the same time, on the rescue recovery plan, based upon the feedback of the community, we took some really interesting ideas to our compliance and legal team and thought, is there a way of doing this for the non-high net worth and non-accredited investors? And so far, they've come up with a plan that could work for both. I don't want to disclose that until it's been signed off, but we are working actively on solutions for both. And if there isn't a solution for both, it's just a question of a time frame of when you can take action, just like Celsius will have a time frame in which you can withdraw. There will be a time frame in which licenses are secured in order to take certain actions. But I'm pretty happy with the solution that we have come up with because of the fact that we got backing of a large amount of liquidity that allows us to construct the product in a better way than what we did with the Bitfinex scenario. I know that's a bit cryptic, but we'll release the plans once we know. I don't want to say something that we can't do until we can do it. It's kind of my style. People get frustrated with me because I'm not the person that says 1 week. I'm the person that won't announce it until it's ready, it's beta tested, the license is secured, the product's built, and then and then I'll announce it.
Simon, we're getting quite a few questions come through Twitter DM, so not everyone's willing to jump on the mic and speak. So are you happy to take some questions? Yeah?
I just wanted to, sorry guys, I just wanted to say, I think we missed one of the questions from the previous person, unless I spaced out there. I think he did ask for you to speculate on maybe like a ballpark figure of, if you want to, you don't have to, of what you think the whole could be if there is one.
Okay. Read with this as you wish. In putting together our liquidity partner, we have put together anything between $500 million to $6 billion of interest. That I think is completely over the top from my perspective, but I don't want to be caught with our pants down. And so, what is the size of the hole? I don't know. I do not know. But everything that I am reading is stating that this is not illiquidity alone. This is illiquidity plus a hole. And I want a strategy for every range that hole could be, so that we're ready to execute and avoid the worst case scenario, to be able to prove that this is likely to produce a better scenario than the worst case scenario, so that then they have a duty to go ahead, rather than just doing the lowest risk, worst outcome that leads to everyone having their crypto assets sold at the bottom of the market, creating a further downturn in the market and another downward spiral, and then causing systemic risk with all of the other institutions that have been putting more money in order to try and get those liquidations lower, and having the shittest value for shares, and a token that's probably going to be worth nothing at the end of it. And the traditional banks taking all of the decent assets and then saying, "Go home, kids. The grown-ups are going to take over now." And my answer to that is, fuck that. If I can prevent it, then I'll do that till the end.
Okay, so a question that was submitted via a Twitter DM from White Choco Boy, that's the Twitter handle. They've written, is Simon just basically doing a hostile takeover and using community sentiment to get him leverage with the Celsius Network board?
Okay, so I run a company called banktothefuture.com, and I do believe that banktothefuture.com would be perfectly positioned in order to, if a new board and a new company and a new structure is needed, then I do believe that that would be something that we would like to consider. We would put in a bid to do that. And I would also be reaching out to people that could probably put in better bids than us and say, here's our bid, you put in a better bid, because I'd rather get a better result. If there is no other bids, then they could consider our bid. And I personally believe that we'd be ideally positioned to try and maximize shareholder value with a new board, a new team, and a new structure, and a new regulatory model. I think that is something that we would be positioned to do. Did we enter this trying to do that? I can't prove it. You have to make a judgment decision. I came in, depositors first, Celsius, save this stuff. Here's how you save your reputation if I were in charge. Don't pass me on to TradFi advisors, but now you pass me on to TradFi advisors, I'll give them the strategy. If they're not going to do it, we'll do it for you. and you've got to have a timely fashion in order to preserve the reputation of the great community that you have built. And this is what you need to do. If you can't do that, then you are going to be entering into M&A conversations, because our next job is to preserve shareholder value. Did we set out to do that? Absolutely not. You can't prove it. You can believe me or not believe me. But if we enter into that phase, then I'll do our damnedest to try and preserve as much shareholder value with all of the tools that we have, because I do believe that Alex was onto the right idea. The digital hard sound money collateralized in a peer-to-peer fashion is a game-changing application. And if it's sold in compliance with securities laws, then full disclosures, full transparency, and effective, suitability testing is needed. And if those assets need to be leveraged, then it needs to be under the regulations of a banking license or an investment banking license if it needs to be underwritten. And I believe that there is a future in that, and I'd like to support building that future, unless someone else can do a much better job than us. And I'll just get back to business as usual at Bank to the Future and our roadmap and our plan, and our long-term vision for the future of finance. And if Celsius can maintain that shareholder value with their existing board, get the correct regulations, get the correct licenses, and build and rescue the community and put community holder whole, then I'll be the first one to come on this AMA and say, Jesus, all of that shit that I was doing was a complete waste of time. A hostile attack is something that happens to a public company. A public company means you acquire shares, and you do what FTX is doing with Robinhood. A private company where Alex is the primary shareholder means that nothing can happen unless Alex signs off on it. And avoiding bankruptcy means that those decisions will be made by somebody else. Avoiding bankruptcy and putting together a plan for another brand, another board to take over could only happen if Alex makes that decision. And therefore, it's fully aligned. And Alex just needs to make that decision. My personal perspective is I don't believe the lawyers will be allowing Alex to do anything again, other than reading out a carefully drafted and worded statement. And I don't think that the lawyers will allow him to do. Whether he ignores his lawyers and ignores his advisors is a very challenging thing for his personal future, his family's future, and I don't want that for anybody. I leave karma to make decisions, and I don't wish bad upon anybody. People make mistakes. People get themselves accidentally in shit they didn't want to get themselves into. They may have even done it with the best interest, where they tried to rescue something and push to the end. But the reality is, if one day before and knowing that this shit was happening, rather than telling people that there's a hole and withdrawals and giving people the opportunity to withdraw, whether that intention was in order to save the business versus prevent issues for the business versus what consequences that had if people could have withdrawn, that's a karmic spiritual thing for me. And there's law that will decide what the consequences of that are. And I hope for the best outcome for as many people, because I do truly respect what Alex created here, what the board created here. And I don't want, I don't know. That's not my job. That's not my job to judge on that. It's not my job to throw anyone under the bus. There is a gray area here. I said, and I had to put together an ethos, and I said hashtag depositors first, because that's all I could stick to. Depositors first. What can we do for them? Then shareholders. If there is depositors made whole, there may be shareholder value. If that happens, then there may be a future for the token. And if this all ends up the way that it worked out for Bitfinex, it will go down in history in economics textbooks as one of the most incredible things that the community got together and beat the shit out of traditional liquidation proceedings. If it all goes wrong, then I just need to make sure that what I'm doing is squeaky clean, because everyone's going to be all over this, picking every single hole. And that's why I can't be involved in anything that gives the ammunition. And I have a business and a fiduciary duty to my shareholders to not make stupid risks and do stupid things for the value of their shares.
Okay, Luggage Donkey is next. Your question, please.
Hey there. The mic cut out there. The audio cut out for a second there. Sorry about that. So thanks Azad and Simon and Plan C for doing this. Really, really appreciate it. I'm a depositor and also a sell token holder. And so I wanted to, I've been listening for a bit here, and I wanted to see if you could maybe give a range in two aspects. Timeline for what's going on, for what could, save Celsius, and then the timeline, and then I forgot the other one. So just timeline on how things are going.
Okay. Yeah. What I can do is I can't give you a timeline because there's certain things that need to be signed off by advisors, lawyers, and things that I can't control. And that's why I never promise. People ask me all the time, when's your retail license coming through? There's things that I can't promise. Regulators need to sign off on that. I don't control regulators. I can't sign off on things that other people, no matter how hard I try, sometimes if I try harder, a baby still takes 9 months, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I push. A baby still takes 9 months. Okay. So with that said, what have we done in history? We were involved in putting together a partial part of the liquidity when Tether had an $850 million hole as a result of government seizing the bank accounts of a company called Crypto Capital that was running an unlicensed shadow bank, and the founder of that bank went to prison. And so Tether found itself missing $850 million, and therefore it was no longer backed one-to-one. And the reason they were using that bank in the first place is because of a very similar speculative attack from a Twitter account that led to no bank in the world wanting to serve Bitfinex, and then Binance grew to become the largest exchange in crypto because they were putting millions and billions into Tether, that then created a ginormous issue where the banks would no longer support them. And I saw all of that behind the scenes. No one will tell you the story of how these things play out. They'll just give you the Twitter version of it. And then people throw people under the bus because companies like Bitfinex don't have or didn't have a PR team at the time. And I've seen reputations get destroyed through not doing effective communication. And my fear was that was happening with Celsius. And so when we had that $850 million hole, Bitfinex needed to find $1 billion, and they found it in 2 weeks. They did a token strategy, and the issue was resolved in 2 weeks. That is exceptional performance, and that only happened because of the strength of the relationships that the board had built with their community and their depositors and their investors that had made a shit ton of money out of the Bitfinex recovery plan a few years earlier. Now, the Bitfinex recovery plan took it was executed, it started, we signed an MOU and made a public announcement within 2 weeks, and the whole thing was completed within 9 months. And still to this day, people hold shares that paid out a lot of dividends and were worth a lot more. But it took 9 months for the 72 million hole to be plugged, done and dusted, debt settled, equity issued, and the majority chose equity in a company that went on to support one of the biggest bull markets out there. So that's that one. Kraken was involved. We were a shareholder in Kraken in supporting Mt. Gox recovery, appointed by the trustee. They went into liquidation proceedings. They then went into bankruptcy. And 8 years later, that shit is still going on. Why? Because one person comes along and says, I'm entitled through my lawsuit to settle my lawsuit before creditors and before depositors, and some prick, an asshole, comes along and interferes with people getting their deposits back through deeply unethical practices by trying to sue Mt. Gox for like something outrageous like $15 billion or something like that, saying I was entitled to all the business because I'd signed a contract. And so all of the predators and all of the people that signed agreements with Celsius over the last few years, as they went from 40 to 800 people at the speed of light, will all try and get their piece, and it gets in the way of depositors being settled. And it's a disgusting, horrible process. At the same time, it may not work that way. There are fast, bankruptcy proceedings. They may not sell the crypto. And we need to be ready to lobby if it turns out that there's no longer Alex and the board to influence those decisions. We need to be ready to have all of the firepower to let the bankruptcy. And by using US, it's different to what happened with Mt. Gox in Japan. But we need to be ready with those grenades and ready with that ammunition, because I'll be damned if I sit back and watch TradFi take over and sell my crypto and create a downward spiral in the markets again, just so that some people can pick up some cheap Bitcoin. And will I be picking up cheap Bitcoin? Yes, because I full disclosure, I dollar cost average, and I've shown exactly how my strategy works, and I've never deviated from that. I will continue to do that exact strategy, and I'm not changing the way that I act, and I'm not trading because I can't be on the wrong side of market manipulation when all these things unfold in the future. Just like Mark Capellis went to prison because he created a Willy bot and a short squeeze on Bitcoin that led to that being part of the case that ended up with Mark Capellis in a prison in Japan.
Okay, before we move to next speaker, just wanted to ask Plan C and Simon, how much more time do you want to give?
Maybe until it just feels like the questions are getting boring and we're saying the same thing. Why don't we put this out?
It's
Is
up to
there
you,
any
Simon.
major things that we just haven't covered? I don't want, people are going to unearth more conspiracy theories, and we'll come back on again if there's more. But is there any major ones that are out there that just haven't been covered? Try and come up with a good one.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like I'm here to stay as long as you guys want to, but I respect Simon. I mean, this is a lot of talking for you, so it's up to you guys. But I'll stay as long as you need me to. And then as far as like the questions, I think if we start getting questions that are overlapping, if we feel like we haven't hit on something like major, but like I'm putting out, I'm tweeting out, I'm trying to get as many people in here that have questions as possible. So, but yeah, keep going, and then we'll just I think we'll intuit when it's time to end it.
Yeah, my voice will probably go in about half an hour, so let's see how we do. And I'm sorry, I can't help it. I try and do short answers, and I just waffle on. I just can't help myself. When I'm interested in a topic, and people complain about the length of my videos all the time, I try. I just can't. I'm just too passionate about the subject, and I keep repeating myself, and it's just who I am.
Okay, we've got next speaker, Average Joe.
Yes. Hey,
Average
yes.
Joe. Yeah.
Happy 4th of July to the Americans. Thank you, Simon, for doing this call, and condolences for the loss of your father. I am a depositor. I am an accredited U.S. investor. I hold Cell Token and some other tokens on the Celsius app, and I was a very big believer in the do good, do well, and what Alex and his team was working to accomplish, and unbanking people, and I really bought into that message, and especially knowing that I have a friend that works in the banking industry, and what the costs are to run a bank is just what he was able to do to consolidate all of that and reduce those costs. I thought, that added greatly to his, bottom line. But, my question, I still don't have clarity as a Cell Token holder. What are your plans for the Cell Token? And I know Plan C is a top 200 Cell Token holder. I believe he's disclosed. And, does it matter which proposals accepted going forward? I really like to know, how important is the community to you? Because, the community is deeply tied to the Cell Token.
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So I'm a Bitcoiner. I believe in Bitcoin, and I believe that everything else is a security and will be a security in the future. Maybe Ethereum's not a security. And maybe there's some Web3 there, and I'm willing to speculate a percentage of my Bitcoin on those outcomes. And I believe that equity is where a lot of the long-term value lies, because I believe that the additional rights in times like these are very important that don't come with tokens. And I think tokens are very, very confusing, in terms of, we saw it with Ripple and XRP, where people thought they were investing in the company, and then they realized that they're not. And then, I'm a shareholder in Ripple Labs, the company, and the shit show that created. And then the SEC comes along and tries to make a case. And then it's just confusing as hell. And then you put some tokens on the balance sheet. And then, so look, this is what I believe it is in the future. If you create a burn token, I believe people invest because of the burn, and it's connected to the business. I believe every regulator in the world will consider that a security in the future. And just ask Binance. The only reason that they could do it is because they had their own exchange, and then eventually everyone forgot about regulations until the next regulatory crackdown and started listing it on their exchange, BNB token that is. Okay, so I've been crystal clear about that since this ICO thing started in 2014, and I invested in one of the very first token sales, which was Mastercoin, that later became Omni, and Omni was the layer that created Tether on top of Bitcoin, and then invested in the Ethereum ICO, got Bank to the Future investors through mining, and everything that came after that. But I reached a conclusion, and this is why people ask, well, what about the Bank to the Future token? I said we only sold that in compliance with securities laws to our investor community. And when we realized that this token has to be a security in the future, we waited until the security token ecosystem and started investing in the companies that were going to build the security token ecosystem. We acquired exchanges like altcoin.io to turn it into a security token exchange. We invested in Securitize that were putting together ways in which these tokens could be securities. We started looking at funding rounds like INX. We worked with companies like Exodus, who we were funders of in the first round, gave 179x returns to our investors when they did a Regulation A+ security token offering. And that's now traded on Securitize. So we've been, that industry is moving slow as shit, but eventually I believe that's the future of tokens that involve burns. Because people are investing in them, and if they're investing in them, they need disclosures, and risk warnings, and all the things that securities have, as well as suitability requirements. I believe all of that. I invested in companies that do all of that on chain. I invested in BlockPass, that are taking some of that stuff and making it available to be put on chain so that it can offer the next wave of innovation and disrupt regulators into bots and technology. I'm all for all of that innovation and things that happen next. So if it turned out that the strategy was that Bank to the Future needs to try and salvage shareholder value by putting together a board and putting together a new entity, then the way this would look is that I would do exactly what I just said. Put together a structure that makes depositors whole first. If that structure works and they're happy, then they will use the new company, and therefore there may be equity value after a ginormous drop in value as a result of this. We've already seen the types of valuation decreases from FTX buying BlockFi. A $4 billion company is now worth somewhere between 25 million and 240 million if they meet all of their earnout targets. We know what valuation hits this has had on the equity. Celsius was a $3 billion company, and it has not been able to, it had to suspend withdrawals, and therefore that would have a larger hit than BlockFi that didn't need to suspend withdrawals. So that would all be factored in figuring out what to salvage from that company. And I believe that we could put together a structure that would do it better than someone else that's not a depositor and not a shareholder. That's my belief. If there is a future for the company, and if it needs to be done under a new brand and a new management, then I believe the Cell token has a chance of survival. And we've looked at proposals like this. So I was investor in Eric Voorhees' Shapeshift, which was the first DEX in the world. That DEX recently turned its company into a DAO, and it handed over the intellectual property to the community, and then the community put together DAOs and went away and put together the Fox token and put it into a DEX, and has done. We were involved in one of the only companies that have successfully transitioned from a company to a DAO. Look, if that's the future of the Cell token, then here's what I would do if you're putting me on the spot. Just like we are moving fast and getting community support around what to do with that, we do the same with the token. If it needs to be handed over to the community, if it needs to be a security in the future so it can trade on a security token exchange, then we've got the relationships and the infrastructure to make that happen. And we would, if the brand is something that the community would like to continue with, and then the community figures out ways of creating DEXs and DAOs, then fine, eat your heart out. Have your votes, figure out the model. That's a community project. We've been involved in such things. We can make that transition. I don't want to commit to anything right now because it involves regulatory uncertainty. But those are my beliefs, that this either is going to be a security or it's going to be some kind of DAO. And if that is allowed to exist in the future, then the community are probably the best in determining what the future of that DAO would be.
Hey, Simon, can I just quickly say something here? Because I feel like I can really speak to the Cell token holder as good as almost anyone probably. So, as you know, the Cell token, was the initial way the company raised funds. So they actually used the Cell token to raise, I can't remember the exact number. I think it's like between 30 and 50 million. So it did raise the initial capital for Celsius, the company. If you actually, if people listening to this call actually go and read through the white paper of the Celsius company, I mean, the white paper, if you look through it, it's pretty clear that the whole flywheel model, the way it was pitched, the way it was sold, is the company, goes up in deposits. Alex said this on numerous AMAs. More users, more deposits, flywheel goes, token goes up in price. It was so connected. I mean, to say the Cell token is not a security, I mean, the Cell token has zero value without the company. The company is the only thing over the last couple of years that could have created any value for the token. I mean, the token was completely pitched as this is connected to the company. Look at the white paper. It raised the funds. It is a security. I mean, I'm not obviously I don't have the qualifications to assess that, but I'm telling you, the reason why people held this token is because they believe in the company and they felt like the Cell token had a connection to the company. Now, the power of the Cell token, I've been here since basically the beginning. And when the Cell token was performing well in 2020, the amount of free advertising that it gave, to the Celsius company, the empowerment, the sentiment, bringing the community together, like just it has a lot of power. When it was performing well. Obviously, things went in the opposite direction, and actually on the way down, Alex admitted, in 2021, that they basically neglected the Cell token completely and focused on the company. Now, the end result of that was the Cell token completely collapsed, and a lot of the charts that were posted online creating this bank run included the Cell token chart and saying, why would you ever put your assets in a company with a token that's dropping like a rock here and has like no liquidity, and the community is getting liquidated. So this token ended up being the best thing in 2020 for the company and the worst thing in 2022, and it actually left the company open to attacks. And I remember being on a call with Alex where someone said, isn't it just simpler to make this into equity somehow, like some sort of equity vehicle? That's what everyone in the community wants. Literally everyone that holds a Cell token just wants to have some level of exposure to this type of a business model. And Alex's response was, we're looking at decentralizing the Cell token. And when he said that, I was just like, you're going to decentralize a security? Like that doesn't make any logical sense. It's so like beyond delusional. I don't understand the community. Anyways, I'm obviously very emotionally invested with this. I'm a big holder of the token. I've been here for years, but it's like I just feel like the Cell token, it was never. It was mispitched. It was a vehicle the company used, but then they just moved on to focus on the company. Left the Cell token stranded. Didn't work on it. They put out of their 800 employees. They put a few part-time employees on trying to improve the Cell token utility. So this really, really hurt the community sentiment. And I do feel like the Cell token is an amazing way to bring the community together going forward. And if the right team comes in and corrects this like gross mismanagement of the token, it would really change the situation. And look at the passion right now of the community behind the token, trying to create a short squeeze. It's just so obvious. I mean, it's trending on social media.
Yeah, and guess who Alex came to in order to figure out how this should be a security?
Well, you guys.
Yeah. Next question.
Okay, next speaker is from Ryan, who's been waiting patiently as well.
Thank you. My name's Ryan. I have BTC asset-backed loans with Celsius. That is my only involvement with Celsius. It's 80% of my stack. Bitcoiners celebrate people to borrow like a billionaire, as well as stack as hard as possible. And when things go bad, then blame us for trusting a third party. I had used Celsius because I thought they were the biggest company in the space and therefore associated that with safety. I also had never heard of Simon Dixon up until 2 weeks ago. And what I've tried to learn as much about him as possible. Seems very level-headed and like a leader we need at this moment. Whether Mashinsky and the current team survive or Simon comes in and makes a boatload of money off of this or anywhere in between, I want the best for my funds and the best for the community. And I thought that using a BTC-backed loan would be less risky than using the earn or even custody solutions. So right now, Simon, I would hope that you guys can move as fast as possible because my low loan-to-value loans are now close to margin call or liquidation, and I don't know whether to throw good money after bad or just to let the Bitcoin be liquidated. And, it's very stressful, and if we could take action faster, would be great to provide clarity of whatever haircut it would be or whatever the situation is, so I know what to do moving forward. Again, believe in Bitcoin in the long term. I want a crypto native solution. I hope everyone makes as much money as possible, and so just please take action. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate those comments. I couldn't publicly tell anyone what to do with that situation because I would be sued by someone if they took that and did something by someone opportunistic that would prevent me giving what I would normally say. So unfortunately, just because of the legal system and because I care about the regulatory consequences, I'm not unable to give any advice around what someone should do in that situation. The Bitcoin community and the crypto community, many of these businesses did only prepare for an upward market. And because Bank to the Future has been through so many shit cycles, we are able to withstand these markets. And there will be hits, there will be problems. But we've always tried to manage our team so that we have the right number of people not to take advantage of all of the major opportunities in a bull market. So we're not the company that's has affiliate schemes because we believe that people will missell. If you give someone an affiliate link, they will missell. They're not going to understand the compliance and how to sell a financial product. So we've never had an affiliate scheme because of that reason. And we know that leads to lots of lawsuits, lots of problems, and people feeling like absolute shit when they shared an affiliate link with their family and their family got into something that lost them money. And we've seen it I'm not comparing this to some of the other scenarios because there's outright scams. And I don't believe that this is an outright scam. I think this is something that has gone wrong and needs repairing and is repairable. But we've had outright scams in our industry where people are sharing affiliate links and people bought BitConnect and OneCoin and insane things. And they are literally suicidal because they got their entire family into it and they feel like they can't face life anymore. And I've seen those things. I've been at the hairdresser appointment where my wife is being told that they should buy OneCoin by someone that's got an affiliate link and saying that I'm just an evil Bitcoiner that's jealous of OneCoin and you should this has changed my life. Look how much I'm worth and all that type of shit. I've seen this stuff. It breaks my heart. But at the same time, I know that people don't learn unless they make mistakes. And the biggest gift the world gave me was losing a lot of money for both myself and my father. It was the gift that led to everything that, I feel semi-guided in that sense. Sorry to go off the point. Affiliate links have big problems. They create big marketing, but they have big problems. They come with lots of problems. Where was I going before this point? I've lost my trail of thought. I think I've forgotten what my point was. Does anyone remember what the original question was?
What was the original question? Do you guys remember? Or they can ask it again if we don't know.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, what should I do with those loans and things like that? Should I, put bad money after good money? That's a really, really tough decision. And liquidations, here's what I can focus on. I can't give you that advice. But what I can do is everything within my power with the community to prevent a bankruptcy that leads to a downward spiral that puts the next layer of liquidations, that puts everyone in deeper shit. And there are people out there that would love to see that happen. And I think some of the what you were calling Bitcoin maxis, I don't think many of them understood the consequences that this would have on Bitcoin. And I'm not sure that they would like to see that happen again. But if they are long-term hodlers, maybe there are some narcissistic sociopaths that believe that everyone should lose their money in order to try and get some more cheap Bitcoin. And I leave those types of things to Karma to figure out. And I've seen a lot of people that think like that. They're not the ones that ended up with all the big Bitcoin stacks, because I just believe, I believe in Alex's phrase, do good. Do good and then do well later. I think that Alex got a lot right. And I think that we should take the lessons in what Alex got right, but we should also take the lessons of how to rebuild with what went wrong. Yeah.
Okay, next speaker is Mike Harris.
Can you disclose your interests, Mike?
Yes, hello everyone. Just firstly, thank you, Simon, for your help with the community at this time. It's obviously pretty stressful for a lot of people. I am a depositor and also a cell token holder. I've read your Bitfinex plan, which I thought was pretty spectacular, pretty genius. And in that sense, what I got was basically it sort of creates a forced hodl where I guess some people can get out early if they want and take whatever percentage on the dollar, and the others can either decide to sit and rest and hopefully be made whole with the next bull run that is likely just around the corner in crypto. Who knows? I've got sort of two questions, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer them. But just wondering how.
Just before you do the question, I don't want to take full credit for it. The inventor of the peer-to-peer crypto collateral model, Phil Potter, that did it for Bitfinex, was deeply involved in constructing this. And the Bitfinex board, they're not public figures. They try to stay out of the public. They don't get enough credit for the genius that they have.
Yeah, fair enough.
And because they don't, so this was a team effort that was an incredible, relationship of how to act fast, how to communicate fast, and how to just go for it. So I can't take full credit for it. It's not just my thing. It was a team effort.
Yeah, okay.
And all of the team members at Bank to the Future that participated and made that happen. Without the team, it's not. I can't take full credit.
Okay.
Anyways, your questions.
No, that's very humble of you, and I appreciate that. I hadn't really thought about the last question. I think it was about he obviously wants a fast resolution because he is a Bitcoin. He's got a loan that could be liquidated. So I guess everyone's coming from different angles in that sense, which is, I guess, adds a layer of complexity. So basically, I don't know if this is sort of a sum up, but just basically how are the conversations progressing if you are on the inside and having those conversations? And then number two, how confident, say percentage-wise, are you on a positive outcome? The worst outcome being obviously TradFi taking over bankruptcy.
Well, people need to make decisions that aren't me. All I can do is influence and express what I think's best. At the same time, I need to make sure people understand the risks, because this could go horribly wrong. And therefore, if I influence too hard, then people will say, this is your fault if it goes wrong. And so to me, it's all about what's right. What can I influence? What can't I influence? And how do I ensure that people know the risks in case this goes right or this goes wrong? That's all I can do. And so what I can tell you is that I will use all of my influence and all of my experience around risk disclosures till the final hour. But there are other people that need to make those decisions. And those other people have to get the balance right between protecting their shareholders, protecting their depositors, protecting those token holders, and protecting themselves from making sure that they don't go down. And that's a very hard thing to do. And in deciding what's most important to you, token holders, the company, depositors, my wife, my children, my future of my life, that's a hard situation that I don't admire anyone, and I hope that no one on this call ever finds himself in that situation. And I will, do all I can to make sure that I never find myself in that situation. But crypto finds themselves in those situations all the time because people come along and they think that financial services is same as a high growth startup. It's just not. High growth startups and financial services, they are very, very different beasts. And when you're dealing with people's money, emotions are high. And when people lose money, it sends people into all sorts of crazy. And that's a big responsibility. And so there's competing interests that will determine who makes what decisions and what decisions are made. All I can do is tell you what I would do in these situations, and then get them in front of the right people and find the people that really are willing to take these risks, that can afford to lose the money, and know exactly what they're getting into and determine whether they're willing to take that risk. And that's what I'm focused on.
Okay, next speaker is Jeff B.
Hi, guys. Thanks, Plan C and Simon, for doing this again for the second time for us. I really appreciate it. I'm a cell token holder and a depositor, but full disclosure, I sold 90% of my cell and I removed 99% of my assets off of Celsius between the middle of May and the beginning of June, when I was seeing, warning signals. And so maybe just a message to folks, keep your eyes open. Don't put blind faith in anybody or any company when it comes to your money, right? You got to take care. Only you can take care of yourself. And so, Simon, I have one comment and one question. The comment is related to what you talked about with trying to get the due diligence done for the round B, and how it was so challenging with Celsius growing so quickly and not necessarily knowing who to talk to about what. I see Zach from Celsius on listening in to this whole call, which I really appreciate. And Zach and I had a conversation about him leading Cell Team 6 and the challenges he was facing trying to get cell token utility changes through what looked like the Celsius bureaucracy, and being able to make changes. And so I'm sure that's kind of the same thing that you ran into. So what you said is just another data point for me that just shows Celsius was growing so quickly, didn't have maybe the right controls in place or management system to be able to make decisions in a timely manner. And perhaps that's part of the challenge that we got into. The question I have, yeah,
I'll comment on that if you want, and then you can ask the question.
Okay.
I know the pain. If anyone was involved in the Celsius Series A round, we got slammed with our support tickets, and we were, people were incredibly frustrated that we weren't able to respond in the correct manner at the correct time frame. I've seen Bitfinex go from 0 to 40,000 tickets when they only had 3 team members. And it took them 9 months to get through that because they had to build a whole infrastructure of a 30-team compliance team and a 30-team support team. And it is incredibly difficult. It is really hard. And in many ways, Alex did that better than I've ever managed to achieve for our company. But every team member at Bank to the Future was onboarded carefully. There were police checks. There were processes. There were systems set up, knowing that every single team member will be a target by hackers. And it is incredibly hard to onboard people into an industry where one mistake by one team member doesn't lead to a catastrophic hack or disaster or something like that. So scaling is hard enough. Scaling a crypto company, I mean, there's the stories of how CZ and Binance did it. I just, it's an incredible talent. I've always taken slow and steady wins the race, and I've not taken on VC funding because I always want to remain true to my ethos, and I didn't want any VC telling me that you need to go for this. And every VC would have got our business model wrong way before Michael Saylor. We did the Bitcoin standard in our business. Our entire business was funded by not selling Bitcoin and earning enough dollars. Michael Saylor did it for a public company, so it got lots of it became very popular, and also led into the ethos of borrow against your Bitcoin. But Michael Saylor didn't take all of his Bitcoin, put it in one custodian, and borrow against it. Michael Saylor has a big chunk of cold storage and a percentage that he uses as collateral. And we, at the Retirement Plan B Wealth Management Program, we try to teach that and beat that as hard as possible. That this is a risk-on asset class, and it should be asset allocation like that. And that's a really important element to it as well. So I can't sit here and say I could try and kick all the mistakes that were made, but I made a bunch of mistakes along my time, and everyone could criticize me for not building a big enough support team to be able to manage all of those tickets that frustrated the shit out of all of our people that probably joined us during the Series A. It's hard. It's really easy to complain. It's fucking hard to create something as special as the community that Celsius created. I admire that. And unfortunately, when you go that fast, there's no way of growing that fast without making mistakes. And that's what I think. I think the board are a victim of their success. And we found it incredibly hard to work with, get things signed off. And that's because every week a new team member was in charge and people were leaving and the left hand couldn't speak to the right hand. And that's just simply because they grew so fast. And I've seen that many times. I don't know how to do that. Celsius did it. But, that brings us to where we are.
Yeah.
Your question.
Yeah. And maybe just to follow up on that. I mean, so I'm retired. I used to run global organizations for a global company with thousands of people in them, and all I can say is I know how tough it is as well, and it's not for everybody. And when you grow that fast into that size, you really need some serious experience. If Alex himself doesn't have it, which he didn't, he needs the people around him that have it, that can compensate for that. And it's very tough. And so I really feel for the situation they went through with that fast growth. So my question, Simon, is, and it's something that's bothering me, is that there's a lot of divisiveness in the community right now. We've got the sell short squeeze going on, and you've had a lot of dialogue with Otis about that, and the tension seems to be around maybe the future of the Cell token. So I think you really answered that question with Average Joe, which he asked about with, what do you see as the future of the Cell token? But, what can we do to bring things together between the Sell Short Squeeze group, which I'm a part of as well, and what you're trying to do to help with a positive outcome
Yeah.
here.
Okay. That's a great question. Thank you. You do you, and I'll do me, and we can get a better result together. If you want to tarnish my reputation, do it because you found something that's really shitty, and I'll respond. I'll come on an AMA, find the dirt. I'll come on the AMA, and I'll give you a straight up explanation of everything I've done wrong, everything I've done well, everything that's wrong, and dig deeper and dig deeper. But if you want to tarnish my reputation because my agenda doesn't seem to align with your agenda, I have no problem with what you guys are doing. I can't be a part of it, and I don't think you guys can do what I'm doing. But I don't think that our interests are misaligned. I think that this happened because there's a bunch of people that pressed receive rewards in sell, and they've been doing that for years, and those tokens are stuck. And they don't want to lose a lot of money, and that's exactly what they should be doing. And so if I were, I couldn't with a conscience not figure out what a good solution might be for those people in that scenario. And I can tell you, depositors first, shareholders second, token holders last. That's what you see is what you get. If you don't like that, you might say token holders first, depositors second, shareholders last. That's the tension. There are two solutions that I know of for a sell token. It's either a security, in which case wait for the security token infrastructure to mature, and I'll push with all of my might to make that infrastructure mature, and we're getting somewhere. I've been working on it for years. Or it's a DAO and the community decides what to do with it, and they put together a governance structure where those that deeply love that token determine the future of it. Those are the only two solutions I know of. And just like I've done this, I'll come out, I'll tell you what I think, and we can put together exactly what would happen to that, what the future of that is, and the community would decide. I don't have a stake. I don't have sell tokens. It's not my decision. There would, I guess, end up with some sell tokens on the balance sheet of whatever comes out of this. I'm not interested in that. But if something ended up with a bunch of sell tokens on a balance sheet in a restructure with a new management team, then my priority would be compliance first. And then when there's a compliant infrastructure, figure out how that can be a security that has a long-term future, or hand it over to the community if they believe that there's a decentralized thing that falls outside of regulations. But at that stage, I'd look to put together the best solution of handing that over to the community and those people that were involved in it and those people that deserve it.
Hey, Simon, just sorry to interrupt you again. Like, I still have a really big issue with the fact that Celsius, like the entire company and all the equity value comes from the token initial raising of the funds. I don't think there's a way out of this. Like the Celsius, the company does not exist without the Cell token. So like, I would have a problem personally with not figuring out a way to honor the fact that the company exists because of the token, and the company wrongly pitched the token as some sort of connection to the company growth. Like, you look at the white paper, read through it. I'm sure you have. Flywheel. All this talk it was pitched in this way. That's why it raised money. It only raised money. There was only $50 million of value that came in because people thought that the Cell token would be a proxy for the company. I understand, like, it's a very strong educational experience, because obviously equity. I wanted to get into the equity round. I actually was ready to get into the equity, but it just never came. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, is there any possible path moving forward that you could see to are there any vehicles that you're aware of, or like companies or regulation path forward where cell token, you could just get rid of it and it could become some sort of liquid equity in any way? Is that at all in the realm of possibility in the future?
Of course, when you put your creative mind to it, it's not. I can't bite off too much in one go. But when you put your creative mind to it, it can be swapped for what it was meant to be. It can exist. I'm a strong believer in the security token market. I've been trying to invest in making that happen since 2016. In fact, way further back when colored coins were first created on top of Bitcoin in 2012, we were looking at, and all those exchanges got shut down, like GBTCE and the Global Bitcoin Stock Exchange, and all everything you're seeing now has already happened. You just weren't around to see it. Everything that's happening now has already happened, and I've wanted to invest in that infrastructure, and we've been looking at all the companies that can make that happen. We were involved in supporting T0. We're shareholders in Securitize. We bought an exchange just to plug into our BF identity solution that onboards people in compliance with securities laws. I believe there's a huge future in the security token market. We just got to get through this next cycle. If you look at my diagram, I said there was an ICO boom and an ICO crackdown that turned it all into securities. Then there was a DeFi boom and a DeFi crackdown that will turn it all into securities and on-chain securities. Then there was a CeFi yield boom market and a CeFi yield that will turn it all into securities. Then we need to get through all this, and at the end of this, we can turn all of that into securities. So I'm a big believer in that, and a buy and burn token, I believe, is just point blank a security when it's connected with a company. And so if the cell token can be used to support building out the infrastructure of decentralized securities and find a home for all of these buy and burn tokens that I believe are going to have regulatory crackdowns in the future, someone's going to take that market. And there's a community here that have experienced a lot of lessons that are going to know a lot of stuff. I'm the biggest advocate for the security token market out there, and I pulled together many of the companies that started building that infrastructure. It's just not there yet because it just doesn't have the liquidity that cryptocurrencies had when they were allowed to do no KYC. And now they're all getting crackdowns because they've all got to implement travel rules and all of the regulations, and everyone's getting pissed off with all of the companies saying KYC this and KYC that. And the DEX industry grew because of the DAO that we supported, which was Shapeshift, the first DEX, and turning it into a DAO. Nobody's got more experience of this stuff than us, and so I would, if the new entity had a bunch of cell tokens, and by the way, this is not my focus at the moment, and we had a bunch of people that believed in the future of this token, it would be suicide not to figure out what to do with that later. But that's what we did with Bank to the Future. We realized this is going to be a security. We have to wait for that market to mature, so our interests are aligned. Because we never did any dumping. If you look at the chain of our token sale, every single token has never moved, and the Ethereum from the token sale is still in the original wallet because we didn't touch the money until we knew that there was a path forward with security token in a changing regulatory environment. And to the detriment of the community that all wanted us to turn it into a security, we just said, you've got to be patient. So we're in the same boat. That's another alignment there.
Okay, we got a question from a Twitter DM, just a simple one. What's your personal relationship like these days with Alex?
Myself and Alex have not had any bad words to say to each other. I saw him on camera when he was incredibly beat up, incredibly down, and going through what looked like one of the worst, most horrific moments that I don't want any human being to go through. And since then, every message that we've sent to each other has just been proactive. I'm not getting angry at him. He's not getting angry at me. And it's all solution based, and he's putting me in touch with the right people. And that's it. That's the relationship at the moment.
Okay, next speaker is Chloe Ping.
You there, Chloe?
Hey, yeah, good evening. Very interesting and necessary conversation. Thank you guys for hosting this. I'm also an early investor for in Celsius. Luckily, I got out early, but still, I cut it in a loss. Anyway, my question would be: I'm working as business development and deal flow for a big company, and I'm wondering if there's a possibility for collaboration with you, Simon.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we should use this as a pitch-a-thon or anything like that. If you've got opportunities, then send them through to the support team. My DMs are impossible right now. I'm having people try and filter things to me. My focus is there's a disaster. Let's do the best we can for this disaster. And I have a team of people that could filter any opportunities. So just get it through to the support team, because you won't get any headspace from me at the moment that will lead to any meaningful partnership. Just being honest. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Amol Singh.
You there, Amol?
Okay, it's taking a bit of time to connect. Okay, we'll go to the next speaker. One sec. We'll do Lucky Nat.
Hey, Lucky.
Oh, hello.
I think Twitter's doing its thing. It's buffering, saying connecting.
Hi, how are y'all doing today? It's a pleasure to be here. I am a not an investor, I suppose you say, depositor, because I have Cell tokens and I had Bitcoin there. I did some mining a long time ago, and I used to send my mining rewards directly to Celsius because I thought it was amazing to earn interest on that income. So, of course, my assets are frozen. I can't get to anything. But I did take a lot of funds out of Celsius. So I was wondering, I'm a small investor now. So I was wondering what would be the action items and next steps for the small investor? Is there somewhere where we go to get ourselves put on a list or sign up to join forces with the larger investors, and the next steps that they plan to take?
Yeah, absolutely. So one important thing is that if you're small or large, it's the same thing. It's just percentages. So, if a percentage of your deposit is a haircut and a percentage of someone else's deposit is a haircut, it's bigger numbers, but same percentages. So everyone got treated equally in the Bitfinex situation. Now, what is slightly technical is if you do it via a security, then you have to figure out security law compliance, and certain people can do things and certain people can't, which is why we've taken the feedback from the community and are working on a model that wouldn't have that difference between US, non-US, accredited, not accredited. So that's what we're working on. And in terms of what you can do, we created a webpage, bnktothefuture.com/Celsius. And we want to hear from every depositor, every shareholder, every token holder. And if you're on that list, we'll update you as soon as we know what opportunities there are to participate. Celsius will have its own communication plan. We have an independent communication plan. I was asked to join the board of Celsius and I didn't accept it for the reason that I want to keep that independence so that I don't get silenced in the politics of a company that's going through what Celsius is going through right now. So yeah, that's all I got. And the other community, I mean, you know, Plan C has just been helping me figure out who's who and what's what. You know, I'm sure there's lots of different movements that were discussed on this, and you can decide which ones are right for you and which ones you want to be involved in. All I can talk to is what we're doing.
Thank you very much. Stepping down now.
Okay, let me take a question from Twitter DM. Is there any damage control being done by Simon with the SEC to give the community and company some time to come up with a plan to make Celsius fully compliant and not come in guns blazing, destroying people's life savings? Do you think the SEC is looking to shut down Celsius?
I think the SEC said this is a security, and every yield company was negotiating their position. BlockFi said, again, we have a US broker dealer, FINRA registered, and SEC, and every move we've ever made, the broker has asked FINRA and told them what we're doing. Whenever we sell a security, we complete a registration form, and we've spent tens of millions on US lawyers to figure out how to navigate the situation with the SEC. And touch wood, we haven't been in a situation where we need to negotiate. I say touch wood because pretty much everyone I know has. The way that I've seen those negotiations happen is that they only pounce when there's a lot of money to settle. And there is a business model that I've seen that concerns me, especially in the crypto industry. And so when the yield companies became big enough, and you saw what happened with BlockFi, they essentially negotiated a deal that said, BlockFi, go out and raise a bunch of money, and we'll give you just enough so that you do have to sell a bunch of equity to pay our fine. And then we'll give you a fast track to applying to be security law compliant. All of that is public information, so I can discuss it. And I'm not saying anything that I have in private conversations. I think Celsius decided to fight that type of behavior. And therefore, I know that they're all over this. That's another issue that needs to be managed. But at the same time, the SEC doesn't want to settle with a company that's got no money. They're going to be one of the creditors. So that's interesting. We get to see, is it investors, is it depositors, or is it regulators? I think that's an interesting dynamic that we should watch. I wish that I could say more. But at the same time, that's a powerful organization to make an enemy of, and we've built relationships. I like to call out what I see, but I don't want to mess up things that could be very damaging in a time when they're going to be all over this. They're going to watch every move, and it's got to be done well. It's got to be done incredibly well because they're looking for anything. This is going to be the example, is my opinion, to the industry. And we've seen many of those moments where, Charlie Schrim was taken down as an example of what happens when an exchange collaborates with someone sending funds to Silk Road, and they wanted to show what happens. The scams were, I do believe that this is the case that the SEC will try and make an example over, so that everyone then complies with security laws from here on in. And therefore, I think that's why the future of the company is people's ability to comply with securities laws in the future. And if the existing board can do that and rescue their brand, then they have a future. If the SEC would want someone different in order to do that, then that's what we've got to make happen to have a future of shareholder value. Read between the lines in that. I'm just telling you what it's a great question. Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, another question from Twitter DM, and then we can move on to everyone else here. Can you ask if Simon has backing for any of his recovery options by other major shareholders?
There are other shareholders that I will bring in at the right moment. And if we need to pull together a larger voting power, I can tell you that most of the TradFi investors are scared shitless of the consequences for them. And they're just protecting their ass, not their money. And that's the problem with TradFi. They're protecting their ass because they make a lot more money in other places. And this is just something that can lead to lawsuits that embarrasses the shit out of them. So it's over to the people that are not TradFi, in my perspective. This means more to me than it means to them, is my summary.
Okay, sorry, I did. I think this is a very important question, so I'm just going to read it out. It's another message on Twitter DM to me. Hey, thanks in advance. It's loud where I am, so can I ask my question? Can you ask him to walk us? Can you ask Simon to walk us through how he sees the board meeting going? Meaning, how soon can this meeting be called? How soon is appropriate to call for the meeting? What happens at the meeting? And how soon after the meeting can we, the public, expect to know the results of the vote?
I need to, I mean, it's a question from my lawyers. I just know what we got. How fast, it depends if it's done by UK law or US law. And it depends if they go into bankruptcy or don't go into bankruptcy. It depends if they're insolvent or a liquidity issue. It depends if the existing Celsius board or someone else is in charge or bankruptcy is taken over. There's just too many variables there. And it is my belief that waiting is only the right option if it's illiquid. And I hope it is. I really hope it is. But I'm not taking that chance.
Okay, we got the help team. Next speaker. If you have a question for Simon, can you hear us? The help speaker. You're live.
Help.
Okay. Right. Let's the next person.
I think. Do you think the questions are repetitive now, or do you think we got more to go?
I personally think we're really close. I mean, it's up to you,
more.
Simon. We've been going for over 3 hours here, so I mean,
are you serious?
Yeah, it's been 3 hours and 15 minutes since we started.
Oh my gosh!
So,
I apologize to everybody.
No. I mean, there's still 1,000 people on the call, so I mean, it's definitely high demand. Like, I mean, just this, people want to know what's going on, and there's a lot at stake here. So, yeah, it's all about you as far as like, you've been going for over 3 hours. So, I mean,
I'll do three questions. I literally thought I'd only done an hour. That's how fast time is flying. And I apologize to everybody to having to listen to this dry British accent for 3 hours. I haven't got, so let's do 3 more questions.
3 more tough questions or 3 more easy?
Well, tough, yeah. Let's just do, I don't know how you determine whether they're tough or not.
Okay, let's go for one. The ones who got
Try not to have repetitive.
Yep. Okay, let's get Crypto King. Next speaker. Connecting.
Hey guys, hello to everybody. I've been around since the ICO, and again, thanks to Plan C for getting the community together. Thanks, Simon. Um, Obviously, I concur. I've seen everything from day one. I've been an ICO investor and a big one. Uh, I've I concur everything that Plan C has said, and pretty much agree on the sentiment that he has echoed. In full disclosure, I have been through the liquidation process. Luckily, the money that I took as loan was for something else, so I got I got saved. I also was able to pull a substantial amount of capital right before everything went down. I was just fortunate enough. In full disclosure, my heart is with the community and I'm part of the Cell Squeeze as well. My question is, and also I'm an accredited investor and I was just getting ready for round B. My question to you is, assuming there's a hole and we don't know if there is, how big it is, assuming everything falls in place, I'd love to see everybody get whole on the money. And assuming things fall in place and Alex signs off and you folks come in, and if I heard this correct, you have a syndicate or investors who are willing to put in $500 million to $6 billion. My question to you would be, are you going to keep this private, or are you going to open this to people like us who would want it to be part of Celsius round? And would we get an opportunity to invest in the restructuring phase, or you are just keeping this to yourself and to a handful of investors? Thank you.
Yeah, so we have, again, it depends what happens in the restructuring, but we have what's known as drag along and tag along and preemption rights, which means that we would have an obligation to make this available to existing shareholders. And I know that Celsius in the Series B, when they took up the 400 million, they had a restructure. And when they shifted from a UK company to US and various other things, if those shareholder rights still exist, then we have to give the opportunity to reinvest, and they legally have to provide it to us, and then we'd have to give that to existing shareholders. And if we had our way, I'd want everyone to be. My philosophy: we built Bank to the Future on our earliest investors being shareholders in our company. And if anyone's involved in a rescue package, if they can legally, they should have the choice of taking their haircut, and they should be able to buy equity in the company. That would be a moral obligation for me. If the only reason we wouldn't do that is if regulation said we couldn't. And from all I can see is that there's certainly going to be a subset of people that regulations would allow that for. And we'll try and find a solution for those with all our power, but we've got to remain compliant. You don't want to be in a situation where this isn't compliant, because regulators are going to be all over this. But yeah, as an accredited, I'm assuming that means you're from the US, and therefore there'd have to be a broker that would support this. Unfortunately, when the SEC announcement came out, our US broker tried to get behind it, but they pushed hard. But they're going to have to get FINRA to sign off.
Okay, next question is from Anthony. Next speaker, Anthony. Yeah, Anthony, can you hear us?
Yeah, you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So I just had a quick question. Looking at what they're doing right now, paying down loans and also still paying rewards. If they were illiquid or let's say insolvent, would they do that? Would that be part of some sort of idea to help get things organized? Or does that make any sense? Would lawyers let you pay rewards if you didn't have money? That's the question I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. Lawyer question, not legal advice, opinion, speculation, all of that good stuff. Paying rewards implies to me that the board want one thing and the advisors want another. Or there's just I can't get my head around that one. I really can't. There must be lawyers saying that there's a legal obligation to pay this, and if you don't pay it, there's an issue. And you know, the Voyager, I believe, did stop that because you're creating more liabilities. I don't understand why you would create more liabilities unless there's a legal reason that's worse than the additional liabilities. Paying down, I think, is a very natural activity, whether you're insolvent or illiquid, because you've got to reach at the point where you can say conclusively, here is the hole. Because until we know the whole, then there's no path forward. And so this is the exact actions that all I would say is if I were on the board and I were illiquid, I would be on every AMA with my lawyers, making sure I don't say stupid stuff, but saying, we are in this situation. We can't get hold of this money until this. And everybody's just going to have to wait. If I was insolvent, my lawyers would be saying, don't say a word. And my personal lawyers would be saying to me, protect your ass. That's my speculation.
Okay, next speaker is Francis London. I think they're having connection issues, but I'll ask the question on Francis's behalf. If too many depositors pull their deposits with haircut due to loss of confidence, would Simon's plan work? Do you have a view of how many depositors need to stay put for the plan to work?
Yeah, I haven't done the models. We would have people run some different types of models. But yeah, there has to be a future for the company in order for people to remain depositors, and a chunk of the liability needs to be converted to equity, as it was with Bitfinex. That is why the importance of, does the community have faith in the existing team and the existing brand, versus would they hold with a new board and a new brand? That's the point blank question. Do enough people believe that this could become regulatory compliant and financially whole, and that board could all be registered people with the relevant regulators, versus someone, and that will determine whether that works or whether that fails. And so that's the decision everyone needs to make in deciding what to back and what to support.
Okay, that was the final third question.
Okay, awesome. Look, I just want to end by saying I can't believe I've spoken for 3 hours. I feel sorry for anybody that has to listen to all of this, but I hope it's useful. I hope it's of value. You should be skeptical of me if you don't know who I am. You should dig, and feel free to do that. I'm not going to say you shouldn't. But if you can hear it in my voice, I want what's best based upon the parameters that I've set forth, and I don't make all the decisions. I can just find a way or make a way, but there's still other people that need to make those decisions. And my focus is find a path, battle till the end, and if it doesn't work, then at least I tried everything I could do, and I'll just go back to business as usual, pissed off that I didn't pull my deposit on time, learn the lesson, And but also know that I risk managed. It's not my life stack. It doesn't make a difference to me, but it does make a difference to a lot of people, and that will drive me to try and find a solution. And if there are regulators out there listening to this, let's try and make depositors whole. If you want to turn this into an opportunity to screw investors, then we know what your focuses are. So please let depositors get whole, and there are compliant models. And there's a lot of lifestyles that you're messing with here if you take the wrong actions and the wrong decisions. And I hope that you're doing that for the right reason, not for the wrong reasons. And if anyone is buying tokens, selling tokens, spreading FUD, trying to protect their own interests, doing predatory behaviors, karma's a bitch. And if I'm doing any of that, then my personal belief system is that shit will come back to bite me a million times over. And that's just, you either believe me or you don't. But take my track record and make your decision. I've told you what I'm here for. And if you need more questions, I'll do more AMAs. And thanks, Azad, for picking out those questions. Thanks to the whole community for being a part of something incredibly special. And thanks, Plan C, for just being able to organize this and make this happen and being a good community member. That's it. Over and out.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.